Hello, I'm James. Um, James Moriarty from Moriarty Media. I'm a producer and director and the founder of the Carmel Film Forum. We have a really great forum for you guys this year. It's a 3-session forum. We have some wonderful speakers lined up for you as well. For years, I've said the Carmel Film Forum wasn't a film festival, but this year it is. I'm always like, no, we just let you talk to people and hang out with professionals in the field and inspire filmmaking. But we're not a film festival. Well, we're going to do a film festival this year, and we have a wonderful prize from Robert's Camera for those people who want to get involved. So, but we're going to do a lot of learning about documentary filmmaking, so that hopefully you can up your game and give us a great film.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Simmons. The name of my presentation is Crafting a Documentary. This presentation is going to come in like 2 parts. The first part is going to be a little bit about talking about the 2-minute documentary, but I know that almost everyone that's watching right now is actually interested in doing a full-fledged, full-time documentary. So I'm going to give you a few hints. If I were involved in the competition for the 2-minute documentary, what I would think about looking at. And then we'll go into a longer presentation about how I make a documentary. So let me start off a little bit with telling you about myself. I'm an IU grad, lived in Indiana all my life, and have done TV for about 30 years. I started as a production assistant at the PBS station because when I was there, it wasn't union, you could do everything. So I built sets, wrote scripts, appeared on air, produced things, shot things, edited things. So that was actually a good school to have. And from that point, I went on. I worked at WRTV in news for a while, and then in documentary production. I went over to Channel 13 for a short while. That was actually fun because at the time, Reggie Miller of the Pacers, that's how long ago I've been doing this, he had a talk show, and I was his producer. And the station was so pleased that they followed it up with a Jim Harbaugh talk show, and I was his producer. So I had some fun times going out to the Pacers and Colts complexes. Then I went to a place called 19th Star, who did a lot of work for Discovery and TLC. And then I ended up going to Channel 20, where I did a ton of documentary work, and also did the shows across Indiana for 7 seasons, which was a very popular magazine show. And it was actually on the air totally for about 20 years. And a lot of people loved it because what we did is we approached everything in a quirky way. We didn't tell any straight up stories at all. It was all quirky and crazy. With regards to credentials, I have 19 regional Emmy Awards and 5 National Iris Awards. So, you know, I mean, I can say I know what I'm talking about. I've had stuff on Discovery, TLC, ESPN, American Public Television, and one of my shows was actually syndicated internationally to 170 countries. So that's where we're at as far as my documentary experience. And so I think we'll just go on and start talking about the 2-minute documentary and what I would do if I were you. First of all, remember, this is a documentary. So it's different from an arts piece or musical piece or things like that. You want to educate me. You want to show me something that I have not seen before, and that you want to make me want to know more about it. Okay, we used to, when we did Across Indiana, we would have a little joke where we would say, this is how Across Indiana works. It's, I didn't know that about Indiana. I didn't know that about Indiana. I didn't know that about Indiana. The reason I did those joke voices is because the idea is you want somebody to learn something, but it could be happy, sad, it could make you laugh, cry. But what you want to do is introduce me to something that I've not seen before. 2 minutes is a very short amount of time, but it's longer than you actually think it is once you get into it. So try not to waste any of that time, though. Pull me in from the very first shot. Now, James and I were talking about documentaries, mini docs, 2-minute docs that we've seen in the past. And if there was one common denominator that people had, it's that the mini docs started really well, and then they just ended. They'd get to a certain point, and it's like, okay, 2 minutes, we're done. Save something for the end. Go out with a bang. I always like to save some kind of surprise, something that's unexpected. The other thing is, of course, pick a style. If you do want to do those across the Indiana things of laugh, cry, decide how you want to do this. Are you trying to get to my heart? Are you trying to get to my laughter? But pick away a storytelling style that will work best for you. And then the final thing is, and this is absolutely true, have fun doing this. And the reason I say that is, I'll tell you a little story. Back when the Super Bowl was in town, we were working with some students from Tech High School, and we wanted to get everybody in the community involved, and we asked them to do a video for us. And they showed us a video, and to be honest with you, it was really boring. And I went over to the media class over there, and I said, "Can you guys tell me exactly what it was that you were trying to accomplish?" And I have to laugh every time I think of this. They said, "Well, you're an older guy and you're professional. We wanted to do something that would please you." Now, I don't know what you guys listening would think of that as like, is Jim curmudgeonly and intrinsically boring? But I told them, I said, no. This is not about this. You do something that you would do. Make sure that you're happy with the result. And of course, they use different music, fast and upbeat, clever editing techniques, quick edits. And when they pleased themselves, when they did something that they wanted to do, it was actually the piece we wanted to see from them all along. So the other thing, because you're entering a competition, welcome to the slings and arrows of awards competitions. Some of the things that I did that I thought were the best work I ever did, I personally thought that didn't win anything. Some things that you entered to fill in a category because your boss said, "Oh, let's make sure we have every entry in this category," and you walk away with first place. There is no outguessing the judges. You just can't do it. So my advice to you is 5 years from now, you'll have your awards, you'll have your share, but what you really have is that body of work. And that's what's most important. You're building a body of work right now. So like I said, don't even, it'll be fun to win, but if you don't, just go out and have fun. So I hope those were helpful tips in doing your 2-minute documentary. But like I said, pull me in from the first shot and surprise me at the end and have fun. Before we go, I want to show you a little clip about what I mean by pulling somebody in from the first shot and maybe even having a little bit of a surprise. This is a piece where at the beginning you think it's something and then it morphs into something else.
While away the hours, conferring with the flowers.
Spring has finally come to Greene County. Or has it? For nothing is real in this tree made of copper wire. But then who's to say what's real and what's not? If you're looking through John Haywood's eyes, where some men see forks, John sees furry bear cubs. Where some men see shovels, John sees ducks. Where some throw chairs in the dumpster, John sends birds into flight. Where kettles make dumplings, John makes man-eating spiders. And where mothers see spoons and knives, John sees fish scales, tree-climbing snakes, iguanas, and dragons. There's a real fun thing about this, because go ahead and point out some of the wings and stuff are your regular knives, but then his spine is actually...
with butter knives.
You say some people say the wings are too small.
My daughter, she thought they were not big enough to make a dragon that size fly, but I say, hey, if you believe in a dragon, why not little wings to make him fly?
And dare I ask how old your daughter was at the time that she made this observation?
About 30.
Okay, so there you are, just like a suggestion where you thought you were looking at somebody's garden and then all of a sudden you find out it's a guy that takes trash and makes art out of it. So in any way, we're going to go on now and talk a little bit about actually making a documentary. I call the job that you're about to do describing icebergs. And the reason I call it describing icebergs is this. You know what about an iceberg? An iceberg, 80% of the iceberg is under the water, okay? Only 20% of it is visible. When you take on a documentary, unless it's something you actually do for a living, there's 80%, if you're not really a nurse, but doing a documentary about nurses, if you're not really an astronaut and you're doing a documentary about an astronaut, you're never going to know 80% of what they go through. So your job is to describe that 20% that you can uncover to the best of your ability. And that's what's important. Accuracy is important because most people, when they watch TV, they assume that what they're seeing is spot on. So you need to become an instant expert in that 20% that you can see. And that's your job, to educate people. And every so often you might get some flack from somebody saying, well, this wasn't quite, and it's like, well, you did the best with the part that you were dealing with. And so that's your job, to describe what you're dealing with as accurately as you possibly can. So how do you get started? You do a little preliminary research. That makes all the sense in the world, right? And then the next thing is you find a point person. I always found this is really important. It could be an author of a book that's about the subject you're doing. It could be, if you're doing a museum exhibit of some kind, somebody who's at the museum. Whatever it is you find a single expert who knows a lot about the subject. And that way you can always go back to them and touch base with them. And you also try to get some diversity in your experts: male, female, black, white, Asian, young, old. I do that all the time, especially since I do a lot of documentaries that air on PBS stations. I feel it's the right thing to do to get as much diversity in my interviews as I can. And that's sometimes where the point person comes in handy, because you can go to them and say, well, I was recently doing a documentary about Benjamin Harrison, Indiana's president. And the original list of experts that a Harrison person gave me were older white gentlemen. And I said, oh, this is not good. Called my point person and said, I need some females and I need some young people. And he was able to guide me to some excellent resources to do that. So that's the thing. That's why you want that point person as you try to build. This is your first pass at playing those cards, picking up cards and throwing cards down, is you try to line up the people that you're going to talk to. The next thing is try to let the story write itself. Don't sit so hard or strongly in the saddle that you're not available for an opportunity. Let's go in and talk a little bit about how to do good interviews. There is something to chat about first, and that's that whether you do your interview, and I was at one film forum that James had the last time they were in person, and person asked me, do you write your script first or do you do your interviews first? And the answer is you can do both, or either. In fact, I know a lot of people that write their scripts first, and then they go out to their experts and they have a list of questions that are specifically what they want to fill in those gaps between what they've already researched and written. That's something that I generally don't do. And the reason I don't do is for the same reason I just showed you that Naked Santa piece. The interviews always have something in them that you don't expect. They always go in a direction that maybe with all the research that you've done is unexpected. So I go and I do all my interviews first. And then when we go, and then I write my script. That way, if there's something interesting or emotional, I get that all filled in. So we're gonna go back here and we're gonna talk about interviewing. So how do you do a good interview? I don't know what the skill level of folks watching this is. Some of you might be very experienced. What I'm doing is talking about how I make documentaries, and I'm doing this for pretty much someone who's new to this. So hopefully those of you who are very experienced, this is no surprise, nothing new. But for those of you who have not done this before, here's some pointers. Do a pre-interview, call them up, tell them what you want to talk about. The most important thing about the pre-interview is to keep it short. And the reason is people have a tendency, if they're not professional spokespeople, to be nervous in interviews. And I actually had an interview once where I had a great pre-interview and I went to interview the person and he was so nervous. He kept saying, well, what did I say over the phone the other day? Well, I said it just right over the phone the other day. So the interview itself did not turn out to be so great. So, so what I say is don't cover everything you want to talk about in the pre-interview, because you're just asking for trouble. Just do a quick, maybe 10-minute phone call. And then when you hang up, you say, look, you know what you're talking about. I will see you tomorrow, next week, whatever. You guys both, everybody's on the same page, and you go to talk to them. The question is, do you have a list of questions or a list of topics? I generally make a list of topics. I don't come up with specific questions. I know a lot of producers who do have specific questions, and they go through the list. And I know one producer who actually goes through his list of questions twice to make sure that he gets what he wants. If you go completely and wing it, you'll miss something. If you do miss something, don't be concerned. You can either interview the guy again, or if logistically, if they're out of town and it's not possible, you can always pick up that topic with one of your other experts. It's real important to break the ice. When we're setting up for interviews, I talk to the interview person like he's my best friend. You need to get them comfortable, because once the lights come on, it's really artificial. You're not sitting close to the person, and they've got bright lights in their face. And if they're an inexperienced interview, it's just completely alien to them. So what you want to do is when you sit down, and they'll always ask you, do I look at you or look at the camera? And you say, oh no, just look at me. It's just us having a conversation. You want them to focus on you as much as possible. Ignore those lights, ignore the distance, and then go ahead and do your interview. The next thing you want to do is you want to be very patient. One of my funny analogies is that interviewing is like fishing. Sometimes you drop a line in the water and you catch a fish right away. Sometimes you have to wait a long, long time. You'll know when you hear the interview, that's the answer that you want to use. You'll know the minute you hear it. But sometimes you won't hear it for quite a while. And you just be patient and keep talking to your interview subject. And sooner or later, you'll hear the thing that's important. Above all else, listen, listen, listen. I know that's kind of a cliche, but it draws the interview person in the sense that if they're talking and you say, well, a moment ago, you said this, or wait a minute. I've even stopped interviews and said, you just said this. I'm not clear on this. That tells the person that you're listening. You're not going through a sheet of pre-questions that you just want answers to, that you're actually listening to your conversation. And that's the important thing that you want to do, is make sure that you can draw them out and tell you everything that you need to hear. So the other thing is, the more emotionally involved they get, the more animated they get, the more they use their hands, the more they use their voice inflections. And that's what you want, because animated people, happy people, sad people, animated people make great interviews, and they make great TV interviews too. So now back to taping on location. I have only one piece of advice for people who tape on location, and that's do not ever say the words "fix it in post." Okay, get it in the field. I remember one particular instance that I was involved in, where the zoo, Indianapolis Zoo, was going down to Florida to capture some dolphins for their dolphin exhibit, and they sent a videographer down who was not experienced, and he came back with really messed up wireless mic audio on both the host and all the experts. And unfortunately for me, because I was the better editor, my boss came to me and he gave me all the tapes and said, fix this. Let me tell you what agony is. Agony is trying to fix something that wasn't shot right in the field. So we're not going to go a great deal, because that's another whole seminar for James, is how you do things in the field so you don't hose yourself. But the thing is, do not say fix it in post. Get it in the field. If you didn't, then you didn't get it. So we're going to go on now. Hopefully this is helpful to folks. Most important thing here is, when you prepare your script, is to do not, and again, a lot of what I'm talking about is for novice documentary makers. I met so many of them that try to keep it all up in their head. And then they get ready to write, and it's like, well, so-and-so said something great about this. It would go so well with what so-and-so said about this, but I can't find the bite. I'm not sure what they said. Get it out of your head. Get it out of your head. Get it on paper. A lot of that involves transcribing. And unfortunately, that's the tedious part for everybody. Transcribing is my least favorite thing about making a documentary. It's my least favorite thing. I don't know how much time in purgatory I may have cut off because of all the transcribing I've done, but it's a horrible experience. Let me just be honest with you. You're writing time codes and writing down transcripts for your interviews. I try to write time codes every sentence or two so I can easily find the bite when it comes time to write the script. I use an asterisk system where if I really like the bite, I put an asterisk. If I really, really, really know I'm going to use it, I put several. So when I go back through, I can find it easily. I do my own transcripts. Some of you may be able to hire a transcriber. The only reason I do that is sometimes transcribers paraphrase what people say, and they can never tell you if the person's animated or look, very excited. So the thing is that way, when I do my transcripts, I know what you look like. I know how animated you are, how emotional you are, and I'm able to put that into the script. I use those bites that are the most emotional. So that's the kind of the most tedious thing to do when you're making a documentary. I don't color code, though. I don't put all my answers about love in red and war in blue and this and that. I don't do that. But again, I wish you luck on getting all your interviews in a way that you can use them, but it's extremely important that you do get them in a format that you can use rather than trying to keep it all up in your head. Okay, scripting. I really like to write. So of all the things that you've been hearing me talk about, you probably hear me talk about this most of all. First of all, pick a style. The story I always like to tell is that when I was doing this Harrison documentary, I was doing some research and I found a letter that Harrison had written to his wife during the Civil War, in which he apologized to her for not being at her side during the war because he was in the army. And he said, but I'm sure we can find a happy life when I get back to the North. As long as you don't bring too many canaries into the house. And I thought, well, what? That's really weird. And then I read a letter that his uncle wrote him, Harrison's uncle wrote him, saying, I understand you expect to become a lawyer in Ohio, but I tell you, you'll do really well if you become a lawyer in Indiana, because most of the lawyers here aren't any good. And that got my attention because I thought, boy, these people are crazy. And then Harrison also wrote another letter to his wife in which one of the paragraphs he felt compelled to tell her was that the wife of the commander had rather large breasts. Now, why he felt like he should tell his wife that, I don't know. But I just thought, boy, these letters are nuts. So I wrote a goofy script. It was a historical piece. And I made it seem like everybody was nuts back then. And it won an Emmy because people thought that was going against type. It's like, wow, we expected this to be serious, but everybody's crazy in this thing. The other thing is pick a voice. When I write for myself, I write one way. When I wrote for Across Indiana, we had a Across Indiana Ease, we'd call it. There was a specific way. I used to write for Dionne Willis, who's was a news anchor in town. She had a very poetic voice. So I would always hear in my head the voice that was reading my script, and I would write to that. Organize your bites first. Get everything together about the specific topic that you want. And then and put them all in, because you'll make cuts later, but get all the bites in where you want them. And then I always start with a placeholder script. It's very simple. If we're if I'm talking to James Moriarty and he says, I love videos, making them. And then, so the intro I write, I talk to James. And I just put little placeholders where I want to have some writing. So we've got all my bites, we got little placeholders, and then I come back in and then I start to embellish. Draw the listener in is what I always say. You can use some writing tips. You can use different writing styles. I wrote the ESPN 50th anniversary of NASCAR, and I called racetracks, I called them friendships canyons, which is an unusual phrasing, but you get the picture. You know what a canyon looks like. You know who friends are. So calling racetracks friendships canyons was very poetic. Try, however, not to try not to impress people overly. And the reason I say that is because there was a special that I saw that was done locally about the IU clinic, AIDS clinic in Kenya. And the person was talking about people who were infected with AIDS. And they said that it took a while for AIDS to the virus to take hold of people. And it took months sometimes, almost like having a baby. So all these people in the waiting room, you could say that they were pregnant with the AIDS fetus. Now, I thought that was trying too hard to make an analogy. So be really careful about what you don't, you use poetic language, but don't go overboard. Usually there's an old story when Margaret Mitchell wrote Gone with the Wind, that she said she started with the ending and then worked backwards. Believe it or not, that's exactly what I do. I usually write the open and the close first, and then I fill in the rest of the show. And then I always try to write up to the audience. When I was in news, they would tell us all the time, the audience surveys tell us that the audience is a fifth grade audience, have a fifth grade reading level. And I always rejected that. I did not like that one bit. My joke is, what's the difference between a man who drives a Volkswagen versus a man who drives a Mercedes? The answer is nothing. The guy driving the Volkswagen would like to think he could drive their Mercedes. Do not underestimate the intelligence of your audience, okay? Write up to them, show them that you think they're classy people, and that's why they're watching your show. And go ahead and don't talk down when you write. So like I said, I love to write. And when in doubt, I hope this is okay with all the folks watching. I've not ever done one of these before. When in doubt, tell the truth. My story about that is I had a producer for Across Indiana who always did the funny, goofy, silly, wacky stories. But he wanted to do a serious story about him and his dad and his brother taking a motorcycle ride to Washington, D.C., because his dad was experiencing kidney failure and had been a Vietnam veteran and had never seen the Vietnam Wall. And they wanted to go out there as a family on their motorbikes and see the wall. And he gave me the lead into this thing, and it was like, in the history of man, the Vietnam War, and no carnage this. And I thought, man, this is so overwritten. And I said, what is it you're trying to accomplish? And he says, well, I just want people to be interested about this. And I told him, well, tell it as it actually happened. And the intro he wrote was very good. He said, you usually think of me as the clown prince of Across Indiana, but today I have a serious story about me, my brother, and my dad on a journey we'll never forget. It was that simple. But all the gobbledygook, all the impressive stuff, all the, trying to come up with the perfect phrase, it all fell away when he simply told the truth and, told exactly as it happened. So if you get hung up in writing and you don't know where to go, you just think to yourself, okay, what's really going on here? And then you're able to tell the story. So I'm going to give some examples of writing. Most of it's kind of poetic, but hopefully this will show you what I mean by by writing. The first one is a story about a guy who used to, when the country was new, he had an Indian heritage and a white man's heritage, and he used to bounce back and forth at his own convenience between the two cultures, depending upon if it suited his purpose or not. As you might imagine, there's not a lot of visuals to this. So how do you give story a life when you don't have a lot of visuals?
November 1791. 60% of the Army of the United States is no more, and what wolves have not finished off, parties of Indian braves are finding inventive new ways to kill. Of great alarm, all 8 of the troops' cannons are now in the hands of warriors. Stephen Lytell survived crouching in prayer among the bodies, and then something caught his attention. A white man with flaming red hair who commanded the Indians.
This white stranger acted even more cruelly than his comrades. Known as Appaconnet, or Wild Carrot, because of his flaming red hair, he had been particularly adept at luring unsuspecting white settlers to their deaths along the Ohio River. On November 4th, 1791, he tomahawked and scalped the wounded, dying, and dead until he was unable to raise his arm.
11 months later, a man rode into Army camp saying he knew where the cannons were hidden. He should. In the autumn sun, there was no mistaking the auburn hair of the man whose warriors took the cannons in the first place. Now he would gladly reveal their whereabouts, as well as other Indian secrets, for $1 a day.
Okay, that was an example of trying to bring life into something where all you have is a lot of stills. Here's another example that is strictly, in my mind, poetic, just trying hard to be as florid as possible.
It is the sound of looking back, of youthful echoes remembered by the ears of wisdom, of alleyways walked by greatness where children used to play, and of autumn eyes reflecting on fleeting shadows from the past. It is a journey in the life of Dr. David Baker, an amazing man with a remarkable gift.
Okay, so that was me trying to be as poetic as I possibly could, and so there's a place for that. I know lots of times.
You want to go back?
Yeah, no. James asked me if I wanted to go back just yet. No, we're going to go to another example really quickly here, and this is another historical piece. Again, trying to draw folks in and get them interested in when you basically don't have a lot of visuals.
In September 1868, a young boy herding cows along the White River spotted a man and a woman resting by a fire along the water's edge. Turns out they weren't river gazing at all.
His head was half blown off by a shotgun. His wife's body was burned from the waist down, probably from the flash from the pistol shot she took to the head. These were outwardly respectable middle-class people. They weren't the kind of people who were supposed to end up dead.
As the funeral procession passed, a grocer's wife stood in curious observance. When asked why, Nancy Clem replied, "No reason. She didn't know them." But she did know them, for Jacob and Nancy Jane Young were her partners in a loan sharking scheme. She also knew the man who was now one of the nation's up-and-coming attorneys and who would prosecute her for their murder. Turns out he was her neighbor, Benjamin Harrison. The trial was a national sensation. Some 250 witnesses. Harrison shreds alibi after alibi. He turns his emotional pleas on and off at will, saving his most impassioned speech to denounce Nancy Clem persuading her 15-year-old niece to commit perjury.
And he said, "I would rather walk behind my child's coffin than have my child's eternal soul threatened by presenting these awful lies."
Nancy Clem was convicted, but she appealed, and appealed, and appealed again. She escaped the gallows, but served 4 years on a perjury conviction. But for Benjamin Harrison, his skills as a cool tactician had been affirmed, and he would need that cool to deal with personal tragedy. In 1878, Harrison's father died in his sleep. In the Gilded Age, grave robbing and cadaver dissecting often went hand in hand, so the family built a secure brick vault and hired a watchman. But on the day of the funeral, it was discovered that an adjoining plot had been disturbed. An investigation led Harrison's brother John to the Ohio Medical College, and there he discovered a hooded body hanging from a rope beneath a trap door. To his astonishment, when the hood came off, its father! Upon hearing the news, it was noted that this was possibly the only time Benjamin Harrison uttered a profanity.
Oh, what's the matter with Harrison? He's all right. There can be no comparison. He's all right. Ben's a man who bravely went for his native...
It is 1888, and the man who once was one of the country's premier attorneys is now its preeminent Republican, heading his party's ticket for president. Benjamin Harrison's nomination is no surprise, but it is a compromise. The nominee 4 years earlier, and the presumptive favorite, James G. Blaine, had withdrawn his name from consideration. Or had he?
Writing often kind of goes around very little things, little choices that you make. And the one choice I wanted to explain, like when Nancy Clem, as you saw, she appealed her murder conviction. She actually appealed it 5 times. And never served, was never convicted. The thing, well, she was convicted, but always got out of it to the next appeal. If I wrote a straight up script, I would have said Nancy Clem appealed 5 times. But what I wrote this time was Nancy Clem appealed, and appealed again. The idea is to kind of pull people in and kind of make it kind of whimsical. So it's, and I know it's not like, wow, that's stupendous. No, that's a little simple writing trick. But it's little things like that that make for the good writing. Just thinking of different ways to say very factual things. The other thing is that we're going to go to one more piece here, and this is one that where I didn't have any visuals either on this one because it was in Guatemala, and on the particular event that happened, I was not on that. We were covering some Indiana linemen bringing electric power to remote villages in Guatemala, way up in the mountains. And on this particular thing, I was with another one of the crews, so I missed this story. And when they came back and told me about it, I thought, oh, this is a great story. This has got to be in this show. And I said, did anybody have cell phones? Well, of course, they all took stills. So this is what you do to make a story when you have writing, but you don't have a lot of visuals.
These wooden pallets have carried wire, transformers, and tools from the States. Today, they will carry some hope into these mountains. The day before, the linemen strung wire to a shack, barely larger than a tool shed. And in a world that has already shown them unimaginable poverty, what they found inside stunned them. No furniture, a father incapacitated by epileptic seizures, a mother blind, a little boy, and a girl, 6 years old, her head shaved because of lice, her toes sticking out of shoes that have been too small for too long. She does the caretaking, the cooking, the survival of her invalid parents and her little brother resting on her tiny shoulders.
It was very humbling. I'd never seen anybody live like that. I've never seen it firsthand to be that sad. You have no idea. It was something very heartbreaking.
When we left that place, I cried like a baby because it was just hard to see. My son's probably a year younger than this little girl, and I can't imagine the amount of responsibility on my son that this little girl has. We decided that evening we're going to buy him a pair of shoes. When then it turned in, well, we'll buy him some clothes too. So we bought him each an outfit and a pair of shoes. We bought the mother a pair of shoes because hers were worn out, and her father a new pair of boots. And then we decided to buy, collect a bunch of food to give to them.
And so the linemen return, bearing gifts, their handmade table filled with food and presents for the children. It is then that hope is replaced by heartbreak. The linemen learn that the family with nothing will lose even the nothing they cling to. They are being evicted.
We took up collection between all the guys, which is $100 American, and gathered that and to pay that off for them. So that's one less thing they have to worry about.
Yet it is not until the night before they leave Hoya Blanca that the men from Indiana learn that their generosity has inspired the entire town to help the family.
The elders from the church come up, and they had heard what the Americans had done. And they wanted to pray for us. You could see a tear or two coming down the cheeks of those linemen. And linemen are pretty tough, let me tell you. They're a unique breed. And they, to see them guys shed a tear or two is you're tugging on people's hearts when that happens. But that was the things that remind me of how rewarding this job really is.
Thank you, everyone. I know I have a tendency to get into the weeds really deep here and give little tips and this and that. Before we leave writing, which is one of my favorite things, I'll be honest with you, it's what you want to use your writing for. A lot of novice writers, if they get a lot of detail, they don't want to deal with the detail. And so what will happen is if we're doing a personality profile about me, and I say, I was born here, I went to school here, I did this, I did that, I did this. A lot of novice writers will take that part of my interview and they'll put that as my quote, and then they'll write something at the end that says, and Jim, loves what he's doing. I don't like that. I think you want me to say, I love what I'm doing. You want to see me do this, and save all the bio stuff for you, because you can condense it really, really quickly. You could say, like, after a career, this and this and this, Jim found his niche. You have taken all that biographical stuff and you've made it very concise. And now we can get onto the emotional stuff, because that's what you want in your documentary. You want people to learn, but you want people to be emotionally invested. So that is my big suggestion, is that if you find yourself in having a lot of facts that you want to get across to people, don't let it confuse you, because you're controlling the time you spend on it. And what I mean by that is just break it down into individual facts, shorten it up, do some writing. Writing a script is really a challenge. I know one very established documentary person in town, national awards, this and that, national syndication. Whenever he's done with his interviews, he always says, I wonder if I'm man enough to do justice to what these people have told me. Now, this is a guy that knows what he's doing, and he has doubts. So the thing is that what you want to do is, if you're in a forest, cut down the trees till you see the path, and then make it concise and clear as possible. So we will leave writing now, and go on to something else. So I hope you guys like writing, because now you know how I do it. I teased James once. I said, if people listen to this seminar that I'm giving, it's like having Shakespeare give a seminar. It's like, you'll learn how to write like Shakespeare, but you want to learn how to write like everybody else. And that's what you're learning, how I do things. Be sure to talk to other producers, other documentary writers, find out how they do things. And then you'll develop your own style, and then you'll be great. You'll be good. Additional materials. It's a lot of hard work. You make sure when you get somebody's additional material that you credit it. Sometimes you credit it in the show as a font underneath where this appears. That usually breaks the flow, especially if you're trying to go back in time and show a bunch of pictures. If a font pops in every 2 seconds, you've ruined the flow. So, and there are some groups that will say, oh, you got to font us every time our pictures come up. You need to be very persuasive and talk to them and say, no, the reason I'm not going to do that is because it's going to break the flow. Can I give you one huge big credit at the end? Most people will go for that. And that's very helpful, because like I said, without being too redundant, if you just keep seeing accreditation fonts pop in right and left, then it ruins your taking people through their journey into the past. So my editors help me out a lot on stuff like this, but there is something you do need to know about, and we are coming up on it here. That's the fair use doctrine. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the fair use doctrine. It allows you to actually use copyrighted materials without having to pay for them or do anything other than credit them. There are 4 tests. It's the purpose and the character of the use, the nature of the copyrighted work, the amount or substantiality of the portion used, which means keep your clips short, and you should be able to do it. And it's the effect of the use on the potential market for the value of the work. I have 2 of my little stories to tell you real quick about how this works. A long time ago, there was a show called Countdown on MSNBC, and there was a group called the Hoosier Gazette, which was like an Indiana version of The Onion, which is that satirical national paper. And they published a fake story that people in IU, when they became parents, couples in IU, when they became parents, their IQs dropped by 10 points after they'd been a parent for 2 years. And MSNBC thought that was hilarious, and they aired it like it was true. And then they found out it wasn't true. But for Across Indiana, we wanted to do a story on that. So I called up MSNBC and I said, can we have your permission to use the clip where you talked about it? And they said, absolutely not. Makes us look like idiots. Go away. And so I hung up the phone and I thought, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do here? Because I really want to use this clip. And the phone rang, literally not 2 minutes later. And it was the same guy on the phone. And he goes, listen, do you have the clip? Do you have the clip in hand? And I said, yes, I do. Because the Hoosier Gazette guy said had videoed it. And he said, listen, here's what we're going to do. Go ahead and use the clip. You're too small for us to go after. After we pay our attorneys to go after you, we'd lose money on collecting from you. And so use it, but don't credit anywhere in your show that it was courtesy of us, because we don't want anyone to think we're accepting the fact that we're idiots. And so there's a happy fair use doctrine where I had it. I wasn't making any money off of it, and it was going to make a good story. I wasn't using very much. Good stuff. Got to use it. However, there is a story of a PBS station that used the theme from The Natural as the background for a fundraising campaign video that they were giving away at pledge drives that had a lot of nature scenes. And they got sued by the producers of The Natural because what they said was, you're using our theme music from the movie to make money for your station, which is not right. And the PBS station lost and had to ante up quite a bit of money. So the thing is just be aware that there's a fair use doctrine out there, and that it can help you a lot in getting copyrighted materials for free without any legal hassles. But just make sure you know what it is and how it works so that you don't get into any trouble. Editing. Okay, we're almost got a complete show, guys. Going down the home stretch here in the presentation. I always put my music down first. I know most editors do not. The reason I do is because I want to be able to break my narration for swells in the music. I did a piece once where a guy was talking about his dad, who was very religious and liked to walk in the woods. And we had a voiceover of the guy talking about his dad and trees and stuff in the woods. And it just so happened that the music swelled roughly at the same time as the trees all blew because of the wind. And I broke the voiceover just to let the trees move to the music. It's not a big thing. I told you before that a lot of the stuff that you do is in little nuancy ways. You look at stuff, but it added personality. And so what I try to do is I try to break the music for bursts of net sound, bursts of visuals, movement in a visual. I know a lot of people just, put their audio down and their pictures down, and then they put their music last as an afterthought. And I would suggest, if you really want to have some personality in your editing, excuse me, I have to take a little swig of water here. Put your music down first. Some people have the luxury of having post-scoring where they actually have musicians that do scoring for their documentaries. I have not had that luxury, so that's how I deal with music. Real quick, always try to collaborate. It drives your editors crazy when you always review, but what I do every so often after I've worked on a piece and gotten about 5 minutes of material, I say, let's sit back and watch where we are. The reason you do that is everybody who makes a TV program lives in fear of the channel changer and the fact that there's like 9 million options out there to watch. So you want to make sure your piece hasn't slowed down or got boring or gotten confusing. And the only way to do that is to review. Just a quick example of that is what I'm about to show you. I was given a documentary. The gentleman who was working on it did the open to it, and you'll see the open is very fast-paced. But he lost interest in it, and so the group that was working on it asked for me to finish it. And I was halfway through it, and I had a shot of a car losing it from the driver's point of view. It was in the middle of the show, and as I was reviewing, I thought, oh, this is silly. This should be the opening shot. This is what you should see. So I moved this picture from the middle of my piece all the way to the start of my piece and got a good open.
Imagine yourself sitting in a bathtub, hurtling the length of a football field in 1 second. There is no sensation like it, but a driver can lose it all in less than a heartbeat.
So there, just an example of, he did a lot of the work. It was very fast-paced and stuff. But in his original work, it started off fast-paced. And what I did is I slowed it a little bit down, did that little misdirection that we talked about where you think it's one thing, then all the wrecks start. And that was a good way to do things because that's the show that got syndicated in over 170 countries. So that actually worked really well for me. Decisions. Yes, if you're working in a broadcast, you generally have to cut your piece for time. And that's the hardest thing about editing is you get to the point where you have a 35-minute show and you have a 30-minute hole. The last 5 minutes are absolutely agony to cut. So good luck on that. Opens and closes, they're almost always the same. They actually encapsulate what you're about to see or what you've seen. So we'll just take a look at a few ways to open and close shows. And here we go.
Your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge. A sampling of the words which have made William Shakespeare our most famous playwright.
The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. Hamlet.
The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven. The Merchant of Venice.
A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Romeo and Juliet.
She loved me for the dangers I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. Othello.
Oh, that a man could reason down this fever of the blood. The History of Cardenio. That you don't.
Who has a painting and knows that there is paint on there that is not period.
To kind of find the Shakespeare underneath.
This was not a respectable thing for academics to be doing.
He's toying with text that people think are written by a man that people think you can't toy with.
He is not afraid of controversy. He, in fact, might even said to court controversy.
That something could be buried for all these years and now brought back to life is very exciting.
I think it's marvelous.
Who was she? This outcast, this rebel, this paramour. Her confidants called her tender, but her critics called her a despicable cur.
Lovely jackass,
And those who loved her called her acid.
And we will never have sex if God exists. Why did he give me this?
This heart betrayed.
Why did he steal my child?
This soul transcendent.
I will never cry again.
She was christened Magdalena Carmen Frieda Kahlo y Calderón, and she was a litany of contradictions. In the 6 decades after her death, she has become more elusive and enigmatic as a person than ever. But as an icon and an artist, she has become every woman, every man. For her art, yes, but as much for the tumultuous mix of passion and pain that was the life she lived.
I love her because she's real. There's no there's no centimeter of fakeness there. I saw this quote that she had said, and it said, "Todo puede tener belleza, aun lo más horrible." There is beauty in everything, even in the most horrible situations. To me, that's almost like a beacon of light. She was always in pain, but even in the most horrible of situations, she could see light. You know, there was light in her work. There was light in her paintings. That's what she lived for, you know, to paint.
All right, 15 minutes to the top of the show. 15 minutes, everybody. Top of the show.
The world premiere of an original musical about Frieda's exceptional life is an exceptional effort all on its own. But for Carmel, Indiana's Gregory Hancock, its composer, choreographer, and director, it's much more.
The whole show is designed through Frieda's eyes, so I would put myself in her place and try to use my pain, my personal pain, as Frieda used her pain, to create something beautiful and emotional and powerful.
It's a work in progress.
Right. Also, when we run off, can there be a little more chaos? It seems like everybody's just partying in the middle right now. So.
You'll see the production in its entirety. But first, we'll take you behind the scenes to discover his story of creating art out of loss, of taking his own personal journey into darkness, and through creativity, finding that beacon of light.
It turns out I'm running over time, so we're going to pass on the closes here. I'm just going to wrap up real quick here. Thanks for your patience here. I hope it didn't get too specific about things. You have been given an opportunity when you do a documentary to create a world, and that's how I always look at them. Is that people are out there in their world, and you've created this documentary world, and you want to pull people in that world and have them live in it with you for however long they're watching. And so make the most of that opportunity. We have a funny slogan that James and I have joked about from time to time. We call it the Raiders of the Lost Ark principle of documentary making. And that principle is very simply, if you make an audience sit for 2 hours while you chase after the Ark of the Covenant, when you finally get it open, God had better be in there. So make the journey worth it, make it pay off. Finally, just a quick story about the magic of when you know that the universe has said that you're doing the right thing. Many years ago, I was doing a documentary, and I mean many years ago, about Scott Goodyear, who was the closest finish ever at the 500. And we were out at Long Beach, and as you know, the Long Beach race course is like 14 turns. They had 2 practice sessions, so that's 3 hours of practice. 25 cars on the track. In that 3 hours and 15 turns, there was only one incident, and that was a car hit the tire barrier late in the second practice session. It just turns out that the guy who hit the tire barrier was Scott Goodyear, the subject of my documentary. And where was I? I was rolling right behind the tire barrier. I got the only incident in all that was just the one I needed. When you start doing documentaries full time, and James, we've shared these stories, weird stuff like that, stuff happens by magic that you need all the time. So be prepared for the incredible to happen and to enjoy the journey.
I do have a couple questions in the chat for you.
Sure.
The first one, someone was looking at the curriculum document and they were wondering what you meant in that document about the 12.2 column script rule of thumb.
Oh, sorry about that. I should have mentioned that. I did skip it. Here it is. If you use Microsoft Word and you do 2 columns in Microsoft Word and you use Arial 12 point, what happens there is when you write a script and the audio is only in one of the columns. The way the columns are split up is you make 2 columns. One is for visuals, one is for audio. And if you write in that one column down the page in Arial 12 point, what you'll end up is one page will be approximately a minute 10, minute 6, somewhere a little bit more than a minute as a finished air piece. Now that changes a little bit if you just write, break for music bridge, and you want to put in as much music as possible. But if you're just talking about interviews and narration, one page is a little more than a minute. So if you have a 25-minute show, if you write a 20-page script, you have roughly a 25-minute show with enough room to put credits on. So that's what the rule of thumb is. Whoever sent that in, thank you so much. That's very helpful to people writing scripts. Thank you much.
We also had another question that came in when you were talking about fair use. They were wondering, if you don't have someone writing music for you, where do you get your soundtrack? So where do you find audio that can be used?
Oh, James, I'm going to have to ask maybe for James to help with in this sense. I work for a lot of stations, and so we had a blanket agreement with a lot of different groups. There are some websites that have generic music, and to be honest with you, their names escape me right now. I'm sorry about that, whoever has asked that question. There are websites that you can surf around for and find generic music libraries that are really, really, really cheap. And that's what you'd want to do. And I apologize that, oh goodness, the names are not in the back of my mind right now. But do a little searching, because there's also, to let you know something else, there's also several websites for narrators. If you don't like your voice or whoever you've gotten to narrate, surf around, because there are also sound bites. Everything's on the web now. You can find music and narrator voices by doing a search. James,
search royalty free.
Search royalty free, says James. Yeah. And he might know some of the names of the websites when he gets back on. And I'm sorry, I use them, but they're escaping me right now. My apologies to whoever sent in that question.
Someone put a couple in chat. So Premium Beat, Pond 5. So those might be a couple to take a look at. We had another great question. When you are talking about scripting, are you talking specifically of writing the voiceover, or is it a general outline of the entire piece? So does it include shot selections and stuff as well?
Yeah, it's everything. And the one thing you want to do the audio column is pretty tight. It's, if you have a narrator, it's got the narrator script. If you have sound bites, well, you will. It has all the sound bites. It has time codes in and outs. It has what their name fonts are. And then down the visual column, that's the one that's a little looser, because lots of times I'm writing to a specific shot and I'll put that in a visual column. But I used to do a lot of my own editing before I decided that collaboration was much better. And you don't want to micromanage your editors. They like to be just as creative as you. So the audio column is really as complete as it can possibly be. It's not an outline. It's exactly what you think people will hear when they watch your documentary. And then the video column is a little looser. And sometimes it has specific shots with specific time codes. And sometimes it just has, generic crowd hubbub or picture of flags waving or something generic, and you let the editor decide.
I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat at this time. We had another comment that there are plenty of things on YouTube that have just quote the owner. So you can look for the use notes on YouTube as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's a good, whoever sent that in, thank you.
My name is Lisa Manti. I am a graduate from Ball State from 2011, where I got a public relations degree from the School of Journalism. Since then, I've been doing marketing. So I kind of have a background both in writing and understanding storytelling, as well as in making something an audience wants to consume. I always imagined that I would be some sort of film critic, but that's kind of hard to make money off of. So I was fortunate enough to find an opportunity about 5 years ago with the Indie Film Fest. I started as a volunteer, and then I moved on and I became a screener, and now I am the assistant documentary programmer. And that basically means that I have all the power when it comes to documentary shorts. So the way that we work is we have screeners. Again, we're all volunteers, so it's different people, different backgrounds. We used to just have screeners in Indiana. Now we have them all across the state, different states. We have one in England. So what they do is they'll watch and review films, and then they will tell their respective programmer what they think of them, which ones they think that the programmer should take note of, and then we end up programming probably about 10 features per category, and then several hours worth of shorts. We're broken into 3 different categories, and that's US stories, world stories, and documentaries. The documentaries cover both stuff that are domestic and from abroad. So I'm going to give you a quick little cheat sheet of how we review films. Okay, so this is titled What Film Festivals Look For, and I will take you through some of the notes that are most important to the screeners and the programmers, and especially myself. The first thing that we're going to look for is storytelling. Jim did a great job explaining how to write your stories, how to find your stories, how to edit your stories, all that good stuff. So I'm going to tell you, once you get through that, creative side of things, maybe you want to take a look at how a film festival might absorb it, and maybe that might inform how you edit or where you submit your film. So this is probably the most important to me. Like I said, I have a history or a background in writing, in journalism, and so there's something called the hero's journey that not everybody knows about in title, but you probably know about it in theory or just from stories or that you've read, watched, anything like that. I'm going to use an example from one of my favorite documentaries. It's from 2012, so I apologize if you haven't seen it, but you've had almost a decade. I recommend, if you haven't seen it, or if you haven't seen it in a while, that you watch it. It's Searching for Sugarman, which is a music documentary. Music documentaries are near and dear to my heart. So the first step of the hero's journey is the departure, which is basically the introduction. So for example, in Searching for Sugarman, it's all of these people from South Africa who love this musician that seemingly nobody else in the world knows about. He helped through the apartheid. Everybody clung to his music. And so the beginning of the movie is the departure into the story and trying to explain how much this man meant to them and trying to understand what happened to him and how his music got to South Africa. So the next part that they take is they want to go on the initiation phase, which is the road of trials. And there are all these legends about Sugarman. That's not what his name is, but that's a nickname that he has. And there are all these stories about him being dead, about him setting himself on fire on stage, committing suicide, all of this stuff. They have no background on him. They know nothing about him. They don't know, like I said, how his music got to South Africa. They don't know why he's never been to South Africa. They don't know any of this stuff. So they start going on this journey to try to figure this out. And so they go on the road of trials, and it's a lot of interviewing other people, trying to figure out who knows this man, calling people. At one point, they end up in touch with his daughter in Detroit, because that's where he is from. And somebody that was on this journey from the get-go gets a call or calls him. I can't remember. It's been a minute for me. And he answers the phone, and they're just completely shocked. And it completely changes the narrative and the thought that they all had that he had committed suicide or that he was dead or something like that. So then the next step of the hero's journey is the return, which includes the falling action and conclusion. So the next step, obviously, is to inform him of how much he meant to these South African people, how big his music was. His music was so big that everybody had like records by the Beatles, but they also had his records. Like, he was that big and that synonymous to their culture and what was hip and important to them during the time of apartheid. So he's given that information, and he's invited to go to South Africa. And he performs to his first sold out shows because for whatever reason in the United States, his music was a complete flop. And so you also have all of these interviews along the way with people that helped make his music, producers, all that good stuff, who do not understand how he did not make it. Like, it's a total fluke that he did not become famous in the United States. So again, the return to the road back, the falling action, the conclusion is all finding out what really happened to him, getting his conclusion, getting his closure, letting him know what he meant to them and all that. So for me, the hero's journey is incredibly important because you want to tell a story that people don't know about that's going to move them, because we get countless entries to our film fest. I watch hundreds. I watch months worth of documentaries, and there are some good ones and there are some bad ones. Some people don't know when to stop. Some people don't go through this hero's journey and tell every part of the story, so that make sure that there's a beginning, some sort of trials, and that conclusion. There was one that we had this past year that quite a few of our screeners liked and I hated. It was about this man who was an artist in all sorts of respects. But to me, the film just kind of read as him talking about all the things he was good at, and then like talking about friends that knew him for that type of art. So it was kind of like a yearbook best of kind of thing. There was no story. You didn't get to know anything about him, about why he made the art. It was just him talking about how good he was at his art. And yes, he was good at his art, but it was an hour and a half no actual story, and it drove me crazy. So I fought really hard against that, because there are some really great stories out there that will use the hero's journey and that will get the point across. And when it comes to short films, it's entirely possible to do this. We had a really great one that was about 2 minutes, and I believe it was called The Stained Glass Artist, and I believe it was done by a student filmmaker, so he wasn't even out of school yet, if I'm remembering correctly. And he told the story of a stained glass artist, a woman that he knew, either from his town or from a town nearby, and it was about her art, why she did her art, how people felt about her art. So even in those 2 minutes, they were able to get that hero's journey in there. So I promise it's possible. The next thing that we'll look for when we are screening and deciding if something is of good enough quality to show is the audio. We get quite a few films that will have very tinny sounds where the audio is just not up to par. So it sounds like, you know, it's literally in a tin can. There's echoes, it's weird. That is very much going to detract from your story because that's all people are going to focus on. We've also had the problem where the audio is not loud enough. If that's the case, you can always make use of subtitles, but please try to be aware of that to begin with. And then there's always some issues that you might run into with subtitles. Sometimes we see ones that are not easy to read, whether the size is really small or the color doesn't go well with the actual film, so you just can't read it. Sometimes it goes by too fast. We'll make exceptions. Sometimes we had a really great one about a guy who restored pinball machines. He was German and he talked fast. So in order to keep the audio and the subtitles together, it did go a little bit fast, but the quality of the film and the story was so amazing that you will make exceptions sometimes. So we'll also run into typos in subtitles. Again, that's not make or break, especially because, like I said, we'll get ones from out of the country, so English might not be their first language, so sometimes that's a struggle. But like I said, we'll make some exceptions as long as the actual quality is being accounted for and you're doing everything you can to make it easily digestible and something that you want to keep watching. Because again, the audio, it does matter. People aren't going to watch if they can't understand it. Next up is visuals. So this will be touched on, I'm sure, in some future sessions. When I say clear vision, I mean literally what you're showing us on the screen. So we don't want anybody to get motion sickness, so try to be as steady with your camera as you can. There's definitely equipment that you can use that can help that. Know your angles. We'll get some really great documentaries where they do really interesting angles of, you know, it could just be a Kenyan woman and it could just be a face-on shot, but instead they'll do it like from the ground so that it's up a little bit so that you could see all of her garb as well. So know your angles, know what you can capture. Another thing to make note of is your color theme. We've had films that are black and white. We've had ones that are super saturated. Just make sure it goes with your story and that it doesn't stand out in a weird way. One way that we've seen color theme implemented is in reenactments. So the reenactment will be, you know, maybe a sepia tone or black and white, and everything else will be in color. That's a good way to not have to like blatantly call out that it's a reenactment, but allow the viewer to be smart enough to tell that difference. Another thing that we'll look for in documentaries is sometimes reenactments are important, especially if you're talking to somebody that's telling a story and they're talking about when they were a child or something like that. You can potentially use reenactments, but if you were to use reenactments, we just ask that they are not super cheesy. Don't make it like one of those crime shows where it's like really over the top dramatic acting and it's just you can't even pay attention to the story because it's just so over the top bad. It can be done. One of my favorite doc shorts from this past year at our festival was able to use all of these vision and all these visual cues to tell their story. It was the one about a Kenyan woman. They had great angles. They would focus on like hands that were like cleaning and stuff like that. The color theme was used for the reenactments. The reenactments were anything but cheesy. It was a story about female circumcision. So obviously they don't want to show that. So they'll show certain like reenactments of girls walking to the cutting stone. So there are ways to make use of reenactments as well so that you can avoid some dicey moments or something that's just not appropriate to show. And then my final thought, and this is very important and kind of goes along with what Jim was saying, was we have a lot of films that we watch and we're like, we can tell that they had a lot of fun making it. And we definitely want to see that. But that doesn't mean it's the right fit for the film fest. You should absolutely make the film that you want to make, and you should know that there is probably a film fest out there for it. So for example, at the Indie Film Fest, we like to do Q&As with filmmakers. And this past year we had it set up so that multiple filmmakers could see each other's films, and we could have a dialogue with the filmmakers and with the screeners, and everybody could watch it after the fact, and they would have really great dialogue. And there was one that was a documentary feature about a boat that they were trying to find an actual warship from World War II. And they were trying to find that. And then the short that we had paired it with was about, it was called Salt River Water Walk. So it was about Native American river walks to honor water. And the feature filmmaker was able to tell the short filmmaker that, hey, if you've not heard of this film fest, there's one, I believe it was up in Canada, that is entirely about water. If your film's about water, you can submit it and they want to show it. So there is an audience out there at a film fest for you. Like there are film festivals that only want to play the heartfelt stuff. What I love about the Indie Film Fest, and I have helped screen for multiple film fests, what I love about the Indie Film Fest is that we like the quirky stuff too. We like the weird stuff. We like the stuff that like makes you uncomfortable. There was one that we played a couple years ago that was so well made, but so gross. And I watched it once and I wouldn't watch it again, and I made my boyfriend watch it and I just watched his reactions, and he said the same thing. It was very gross. It had a lot of saliva in it, but it was really well made, and it was made by this really creative French, it wasn't a documentary, a really creative like French filmmaker. And so we played it. It made all of us super uncomfortable, but it was so well imagined, so well shot. The quality was fantastic. And we like the quirky stuff. We like the things that elicit an emotion from you, even if it does make you uncomfortable, because you're going to be talking about it. You're going to tell somebody that you saw it. So there is an audience. Make the film for yourself. Make it for whoever you're making it for. If there's a subject that you want to make the film about, and know that there is an audience. Know where your audience is. It'll just take some research, but there are so many film fests across the world. And if you just do your research, you'll find the ones that want to play the types of films that you want to make. If there aren't any questions, you can find the Indie Film Fest on social media or online, and you can absolutely reach out to us and we'd be happy to answer any questions. We're about to do our 19th film festival, so I believe either submissions have opened or will open soon, but we'll start screening sometime in the fall, probably like September-ish, for a spring festival for next year. So.
Okay, of course we do have questions now. So what is the average length of a short submission?
In terms of documentaries, they tend to be longer. So I always have an uphill battle for fighting, because if we were to give every category the same amount of films, or the same length. I wouldn't get the same amount of films to program because documentary shorts tend to be longer. Like I said, it is entirely possible. We do get some shorts that are like 5 minutes or less. We had a great one, like I said, that was about a stained glass artist that was about 2 minutes long. But I would say for documentary shorts, I would say probably what we see is probably around 12 to 18 minutes. It's probably our average. But we do also get ones that go all the way up to almost 40 minutes. And 40 minutes is the cutoff when we consider them features. So we'll have like 38-minute ones and whatnot. So full gamut.
Anthony was wondering, I'm assuming he's talking specifically about Indie Film Fest. If not, Anthony, please correct me in the chat. Do you accept films that were made more than a few years ago? So something he made 5 years ago, would that be?
So we generally just do 2 years ago. If you've done any additional production or anything on it that makes it more recent, then we would absolutely take a look at it. But it's generally something that's been worked on within the last 2 years or so.
Dave was wondering, is there a good process for gauging if a group will be offended by certain content? Just instinct or a process?
So we have a process and we flag them. So if it's something that makes somebody uncomfortable, but they know it's a great film in the quality or the storytelling, but it's just, they don't like it and it makes them uncomfortable, they can kind of remove themselves. They're still allowed to rate it, but then they'll flag it for us programmers. And then us programmers, we are a little more versed in what we're looking for and what's appropriate and whatnot. And we'll decide whether or not we want to play it. If it's super offensive in some way, like we've had some that were like straight up, it like showed rape. I don't think we ended up playing the one I'm thinking of, but it was well done, but we didn't end up playing it. We would absolutely consider and probably actually go ahead and do it, put a disclaimer on the film description or the category description for anybody that's about to watch it.
A fun question for you. Are documentaries your favorite, or is it just coincidental that you are in charge of them for the Film Fest?
I love documentaries. Absolutely my favorite.
Great, I agree.
Yeah, it makes it really hard. It makes it really hard when people ask what my favorite movie is, because I feel like I have to say something else because not everybody nerds out or watches nearly as many documentaries as I do. So I have to like revert back to a different category, but it's definitely documentaries for me.
Yeah, and there's some more love for Searching for Sugar Man in the chat. And also one of my coworkers just recommended that to me this week. So that is interesting.
So good. If you don't feel like there's a home for your film, or where you feel like it's too quirky and it's getting rejected from other festivals, please consider submitting it to us. 'Cause like I said, we pride ourselves on watching all of these things and we like them and we want to show the quirky stuff, the weird stuff, the uncomfortable stuff. We also play really heartfelt stuff as well. Like there are some festivals that only want to play the heartfelt stuff. We want to play it all.
Welcome to the second session of the Carmel Film Forum. We have a lot to cover today. I'm up this time and we're going to be talking about how to shoot with a cell phone and how to edit on a computer. And then we're going to have some really great interviews with some of my colleagues and other special guests. So we have a ton of stuff to cover. Everyone has a very powerful video camera in their pocket, and that's a smartphone. And smartphones come with some advantages to shoot any kind of documentary or any kind of work on. The benefits of shooting on your smartphone are you can point and shoot. You can just pull that camera out and start filming. Back in the day, we had to load cameras with film. Those cameras didn't even have audio. And now it's all contained in something you can carry inside your pocket, which is pretty amazing. DSLRs and other film cameras have a lot of headaches that go along with them. You need to know things about depth of field, and you have focusing headaches. With a smartphone, you can just pull it out, start shooting, and a lot of those headaches you can be done right inside the camera. So they're very, very smart. There's no exposure issues with using a smartphone. You pull it out, the phone reads the environment, the lighting in the environment, and gives you a pretty decent exposure. You don't have to lug around heavy cameras and lenses and rigs and all these other things that go along with shooting with these other kind of cinema cameras or mirrorless cameras. It's right there in your phone, and you can shoot it on the go. It's wonderful. If you see a beautiful sunset, you film the beautiful sunset because you can pull it out right away. You don't have to put together a rig. Your phone is always with you and ready to shoot any idea you have. So if you do see an alien spacecraft coming down, you can film it. Just try to get in focus. Before you shoot with your smartphone, there's some things you need to think of before you go into the field. And those things are, make sure it's charged. If you're gonna go on a shoot, make sure that you got that camera full up. Cameras, when shooting video or even playing video, take up a lot more energy from the phone. So make sure it's good and charged before you start filming. 2, make sure that you have space cleared off on your smartphone. Shoot in landscape mode. Landscape mode, of course, is a horizontal. You're not taking a selfie. And when you shoot video as a selfie and you're going to use it in your 2-minute documentary, it doesn't really fit on the television screens as well. So when you're being serious and you're filming, it's for a different application. So your best bet is to shoot in landscape mode. These guys live in your pocket most of the time, and the lens gets dirty. There's lint, there's all kinds of stuff. So it doesn't hurt to take a microfiber rag or cloth and make sure it's clean before you go on your shoot, or buy one of these little microfiber cloths. They come a lot of times if you buy a lens, or people put a lot of branding on them. I like the larger cloths because I don't lose them. Some of them come in little teeny swatches. If not, even your t-shirt, just clean it. Just make sure it's clean and not scratched. It's good. So clean that lens before you shoot. Turn your device now is a film camera. You're filming some content. It is no longer a communications device. So put your camera into airport mode, and you won't have all the chimes. You won't have all of the bells and whistles going off, because there's nothing worse than interviewing somebody and then have your friend go, "Oh, how's it going?" You're like, "Dude, I'm filming." It's not good. So put it into airplane mode. Let stuff go to voicemail. You'll get to it. You won't miss out on that call, but get in the airplane mode. There's also like a do not disturb on the cell phones. I use that. A lot of these cameras now are very, very, very smart, and they have like built-in stabilizers. And I highly recommend using them. The less shaky your shot is, the more elegant it is. The more it looks more deliberate if you have it and it's stabilized, and it's more. If you're shaking around too much, people kind of feel sick after a while. So I highly recommend to use some kind of stabilizer on your phone. Put your phone on a tripod. You can go to Amazon or down to Robert's Camera, and they have a bunch of camera holders that you then can attach to a tripod and then set down. This is a little baby tripod for if you're maybe interviewing on a table, but you take your phone and you attach it, and it's being held, and you can then put it on a tripod. When you buy one of these, some of these cameras have gotten much, much larger. They're like little tablets now. They're no longer phones. And there's a bunch of different kinds of widths for these tripod mounts, and different designs. And I've gotten a few of them, and I give them out to my students too, because I want people to shoot on tripods to get a different perspective. This one has a fun mount that has a larger camera that can hold a larger phone. And then there's some that are more industrial. Here's one that is on a selfie stick. But the goal of getting it on a tripod too is to get it away from your face. Everybody knows a shot that is from your perspective, your eyes perspective. I highly recommend, if you're shooting B-roll especially, get it away from your face, move it down, put it on a selfie stick. I love selfie sticks. Put it way up high and get a shot from the high, or hold it down low and get like from the grass up. Variety in your shots will make a much more interesting film to watch. So perspectives is a big part of cinematography. And the phones are wonderful because you can glue them into car windows. You can, they're small. They can get into little places that you couldn't do, like inside engines, or, it's all kinds of wonderful perspectives. So use it. It's not big. You can then squeeze it into things. So use tripods, use selfie sticks, use any kind of way to get away from your face, stabilize it, make it so that it's watchable. Yeah, that's what I got to say about tripods and phones. Plus, I have just a ton of tripods, by the way, at the thrift stores. They're constantly throwing them away. So when you're at your thrift store, I buy so much stuff for filmmaking at my thrift store. And tripods are one of those things that have been around. They haven't changed in years. But when you're buying a tripod from a thrift store, make sure that it has a head on it so that you can attach your tripod to a mount, your camera to the mount. A lot of times I see tripods and they don't have heads. They're pretty much useless unless you can buy that head. If it's a really good tripod and you can remove the head and then put a new head on. But thrift stores are a wonderful place to find old photography equipment and lights and tripods and all those big physical things that aren't electronic. You can just find some really great buys from them. So that's my tripod talk. Shooting options. This gets a little heady, but we need to talk about it. Every year they've come out with a different standard for videotaping, and usually smartphones shoot in 720, 1080, 2K, and 4K. And now I've even seen 6K out there. If you're distributing your video on the web, if it's you probably don't need to shoot in such large formats. And I would limit your setting to be 1080. And let's talk a little bit more about that. You can also see in this example of the picture below of how many more pixels, how much more information it is in per image. This is per frame of video. It's got to collect twice as much data and much images. So pixels. So you can see from standard def to 4K that there's really quite a lot more information being stored. So I recommend shooting at 1080 because that's the resolution that is broadcast quality. And a lot so it's going to be a high quality image, but at the same time, you're not going to be eating up too much space on your phone. Some phones can't even handle that. You might have to shoot in 720, and that's fine. But 720, 1080, those are really the sweet spot right now for filming on your phone. If you shoot in 4K, you will quickly eat up a lot of storage space on your phone. So when I shoot documentary or shoot anything documentary, I kind of hold the shot until the moment hits me that I've got it. And sometimes people don't smile. Sometimes I don't just run in, shoot, and run away. I roll, man. If I'm there, it took me so much effort to get there, to get set up, get it lit, get the sound right. I hold on it. And until they break that perfect smile, I roll. And if I was shooting 4K, I couldn't shoot that way because it'd be way too much footage just eaten up on my hard drives for that just 2 seconds that I'm going to need that smile for that child to open up and be thrilled. So I roll, man. I roll, and I eat up space. And usually when I look at my footage too, I scrub to the end because that's really where the gold is toward the end of that shot. So I don't stop filming until I get it. So anyway, shoot 1080. The next thing is frame rate. And this gets a little bit confusing, but when films were being created, filmmaking was created, it was shot in 24 frames a second. And that's kind of the sweet spot as far as our perception of these 24 frames of images slowly changing to where we then perceive those images stitched together to then let us feel like there was movement. Now, when TV came on, and they increased it to 30 for television, for video, so a lot of people that like kind of a filmic flavor shoot in 24. It saves also to a little bit of space on your phone, which is good. But there are also good reasons to shoot in 30 for 30 frames a second. And there's also reasons to shoot faster. Because when you start slowing stuff down, the more frames you have, the more graceful it is. So if you're shooting slow motion footage at 60 frames a second, there's a reason for that. And we're going to discuss that a little bit in greater detail. And by the way, the curriculum that is on my website that we've also posted in the chat, that curriculum describes the frames per second a little bit more, so that if you are interested in adjusting those things, the curriculum will describe a little bit more detail. The wonder of video apps. Downloading video apps adds advanced features to your smartphone camera. It's wonderful to shoot with a smartphone because you can just pull it out and start shooting, and you're pretty much going to get a nice image. But the actual control of creating cinematographic images is to take over the automatic functions of your phone and using the manual features, or turning it on to manual features, or controlling it manually, so that you then can do special things with the phone and definitely get the shot. An excellent smartphone app, the one that everybody goes to, and there's a few of them, is Filmic Pro. Now, at the same time, when I suggest an app or an editing piece of software for your phone, I go and look at that app. I test it out, but I also want to make sure that it works on everybody's phone. If you have an Android or a smartphone, these apps work for all phones. So when anything here that you learned from me today, you can apply that to anything related to your phone. This particular piece of software turns your video camera into a professional, your phone into a professional video camera. It quite literally turns on all the stuff that they have turned on in audio, and then creates a professional video camera out of this. So people are shooting feature films now with these cameras, and they just look amazing, and I can't tell that they were shot in anything else. But it's all about your creative application of these things, and to control it, to control the creativity, you have to then control it with an app. Filmic Pro takes control over all the manual features in your phone, letting you you set the camera's exposure, your ISO, your shutter speed, your focus. You can pull focus with it. You can zoom with it inside the app. And one of the biggest things is that you can control the color balance. And color balance is one of those things where you want the shot not to look like it's a particular environment, or you want to tint the shot. There's all kinds of creative things you can do with color when you're filming. Make it look more natural, make it have different kinds of flesh tones. It's very powerful. Plus, I think the most important part of one of these apps too is exposure. When you're filming something, you have a very bright background. Your characters, your foreground characters, will be underexposed. They'll be darker, or you might not be able to see their features. But by having one of these apps, you can open up the exposure on your camera so that you brighten them up and you can actually see their face. And that's really a lot of power. You really need that. So let's go on to frame rates. We're back to frame rates. And we're back to slow motion and time lapse. Filmic Pro lets you control your frame rates, and you can do special things like control time lapse and slow motion. I know the iPhone has put into their app a slow motion and a frame rate button that you can get slow-mos and do time-lapse footage where you can, but at the same time, if you want even more control of that, this video app will help you with that. So let's talk a little bit about adding a cinematographic look to your presentation. I love slow motion and time-lapse. I think it is controlling time like that, controlling time in cinematography is a very, very powerful tool. And I think it's something that when I told you to get a different perspective as far as your angles go when you're filming by using a tripod or a selfie stick, this is actually controlling time that we won't perceive, and things can be revealed in that time that you would have never seen before, or it would have taken you a long time to see. So let's talk a little bit about what those things are. Time lapse is a technique whereby the frames of your camera is set to shoot on a particular interval. So it's going to shoot every 10 seconds or every 5 seconds or every hour even. And by doing that, you can see things that take longer than hours, days, and months and years. You can capture that and you can see that all in a condensed, faster speed of time. I have an example next to it of a flower opening up. If I were just to look at the flower, I was like, oh, look, the flower hasn't opened. And then I come back and it's been opened. It just takes a long time for them to kind of to reveal themselves. But by shooting it in a time lapse, you then can stitch those images together and you can see those things open up. Clouds are a good way to see that. We see a lot of that on television where the clouds are running by or the car lights streak by. That's all done through time-lapse photography. And then the next example, of course, is slow motion. And in your phone, it's a lot of times it's abbreviated slow-mo or slow-mo. And it's whereby what you have filmed is slow down. And again, I've given another example of a television program where they did a lot of slow motion running on beaches. But slow-mo can be very beautiful. You see Martin Scorsese's did Raging Bull and did fight boxing with slow-mo. And it became very elegant and almost like a dance. And you could see how emotionally emotional the fighting was. So it's a really powerful tool. So definitely experiment with them. You do have the power to do that within your phone. But With anything comes a warning. With anything good, there's also a possibility of error. So when you're rendering these time lapses and slow-mos, these files need to be exported and rendered so that then they can be edited in some kind of editing program. So what you need to do is practice and experiment before you apply it. Take your camera and put it on a tripod and shoot a plant opening up, or shoot some kind of plant growing or flower opening, and experiment with it a little bit. Follow your dog around using the slow motion thing and have him scamper around in slow-mo. But then try to export it and use it in an editing program before you go about those things. Because if you think it's going to export and go in, or you're going to export and go in, it might not come together. So double check. All right, on to the next thing. Saving your movie files. This is a big deal. The storage on your smartphone has a limited capacity. We've talked about that before. You can only get so much stuff on there. Some smartphones connect via a USB to your computer that lets you download your footage. But iPhones let you download your footage wirelessly through an app called AirDrop, which is wonderful. But the big warning about that, if you let your iPhone connect to the cloud and then come back, is that your footage might connect to your computer, and you might see it on your phone and your computer, but if you erase it in one of those places, it'll disappear because the computer is using the cloud and it's just talking to each other. So the big warning is that if you erase the footage on one of those things, thinking that you're going to clear off footage, but it's on my computer, it's not really on your computer until you move it into a separate file. So you got to take it out of your iPictures or whatever you're using, whatever file it's downloading it to, and get it off the cloud files and onto your computer before it's safe. What I do is I have built a file system that I use for all of my projects. I basically have created this file structure. I will then zip it up and then repurpose it for every program that I've ever done. And I'm going to share with you what I know that I'm going to be using on a film. And then I create these files. I put everything that I work for in those files. So programs that I have learned, written and produced years ago on some hard drive has this same file system. So if I'm going to go look for a script, I go look at the script files and I can find it and I can reproduce it or pull it out. So organization's a big thing for being a filmmaker. And so this is my organizational tool. Now I will have a project file. That project file will have all of my different materials in it that I'll use. So, and I usually name that project file what project I'm doing. This will be my 2-minute documentary project. There it is. And then a lot of times I have all kinds of design work and different stuff, pieces that I will bring in to the video. So I have a design work file. Also too, if I'm promoting the film, sometimes I make posters. Sometimes I do layers in Photoshop. But that all goes inside this folder and then would go into separate subfolders inside that folder. So in design, I'll have a Photoshop folder, I'll have a poster folder, I'll have an Illustrator folder. Design is design. Exporting videos is at the end process. We're going to have to export them, and I want to know where those are. I'll have my music files and all my audio files in a music folder. If I have any pictures and I'm doing that kind of Ken Burns look, I'll have my pictures. And then I have releases. So if I've interviewed people, I will have to have gotten a release, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I will have all my releases in one place, I'll have all my scripts in one place. And then the biggest one is source videos. Videos that I use to make the things all go inside a source video file. And then even inside that file, I would get even more. I would talk about when the shoot was or where it was. I start labeling more files inside each of the files so I can just bullet down to what I need. So really important to start your filmmaking in a good way and organize your stuff with these folders. And that's just the structure I use. On to the next bit, lighting your video. Lighting your video is a whole nother topic. There is a lot to know about lighting, and so we're just going to talk about the basics of lighting your 2-minute video and what you can do to make it look good. So instead of lugging tons and tons of gear, which I do, all these lights and all these tripods and all this stuff to make it look natural, just use what light is in the room, what is available. And you don't need to bring much. It's all about how you organize the people in the space and how you use it. So when shooting indoors, I have a little example next to us here. When shooting in a little diagram that I made, when shooting indoors, seat your subject by the window and have them turn their sides to the window so both of them get equal amounts of light. So as a camera person, you can do your interview from behind the person doing your interviewee to the interview, and hopefully the same amount of light would fall upon them. So you don't want to seat them their back to the window, because as we spoke of before, they would be their face would be underexposed and the window would be too bright. So unless you were using an application, another application like the Filmic Pro, to then control that light and open up your iris more to let more light in to expose their face, again, this would be the easiest, most, if you don't have that app, this would be the way to do it. And then the other tip here is that if you're shooting outside, do your best to keep yourself with the sun behind you. The sun, no matter where it is, can cause some harsh shadows on your face, or again, have the issue with being, the sun would be exposed and the person's face would be underexposed, but you can always get around that by having the sun at your back. So make sure when you do your interviews to have your sun at your back, and you should be fine. There's other tips as far as shooting at the golden hour, which is again a whole nother program. There's some information in our curriculum that talks a little bit about golden hour photography. Golden hour photography is always the best to shoot anything in. Golden hour is always beautiful. It's that hour before the sun has just come up or before it sets, and the light is shining through the atmosphere at an angle and is less harsh and is more muted. And anytime you try to film during that time, but the biggest issue of filming at the golden hour is that you only have an hour to get whatever you want shot. So so there's another drawback there. All right, let's talk about sound. Sound is more important than the video. It's true. You're like, hey, but I got great pictures. Why didn't people like my video? Well, if they can't understand it, they're gonna lose interest pretty quick. So if they can't understand what you're saying, if it's not clear, it's hard to follow. And no matter how pretty your pictures are, people will fade from it. So as long as you've got some good audio, you can shoot with a cell phone, and even the pictures aren't great, you're gonna still get people invested. So you don't want to use the built-in microphone on your smartphone. Your smartphone is great held up to your face or out a little bit, but if you're not close to the microphone, it's hard to hear. It also picks up a lot of ambient sound, like the air conditioner going and all that. This microphone is made in a way where it picks up everything around the phone, and that's not always good for video. All you're interested in is that person talking. And at the same time, if you're talking to that person, you can always add environmental sounds as another track on your audio. So, just make as clear as possible those interviews. So there's a couple tools that we use to do that. When you're doing interviews, you need on a smartphone, you need to get a little adapter and a microphone and plug a microphone directly into your phone to get the best quality sound. And I have some examples of that. Phones come with two different plugs at the bottom. One is a mini jack, and the mini jack, you can plug your phone directly into it and you can get some audio, or your professional, you put your microphones into it. But sometimes you have to get an adapter. The new iPhones come with a USB-C adapter. So you're gonna have to get an adapter to plug into your phone to then plug in your microphone. So mics. Okay, we're gonna talk about mics now. There's the two best mics for doing interviews are what we call a lavalier mic or a directional mic. The lavalier is kind of a classic. The lavalier is what you see newscasters have on or BBC interviews, but it clips onto your tie, and then you would take your end of that onto a long wire, and then you would plug that into the bottom of the phone, and you'll notice when you're interviewing, if it's working, if you tap on the microphone, you'll see it bounce. So you know it's working on your phone. So I always get my interview set up, put out my mic, have this on a tripod, and then here's our tripod example again, and then have it on a larger tripod. And then I would go film, beep, and connect my lavalier, and then have them tap. And if you see the levels on your phone bounce, you know you've got good audio. You've got audio that's good. If not, you tap around your phone, you can see that bounce. That's not what you want. You want the mic to bounce. And then when you another issue too with getting an app involved in this thing, or giving a better app like Filmic Pro, it has audio levels on it, so you can actually see them bounce, so you actually know you've got audio. And again, that's hugely helpful. The next kind of mic is the shotgun mic. So here's a shotgun. The shotgun, it's got a little fuzzy thing on it, but the shotgun mic here is a great tool because it's very, very directional. And you've seen this on I'm sure on television programs where if you're working with somebody else, you have an assistant, they can then hold this mic right outside a frame and get the people speaking. Now, what's nice with this versus having a lavalier mic is that you have one channel of audio into your phone. So to use a shotgun mic, again, it's very, very directional. You then can work with multiple people in a room. Instead of having to share the lavalier mic to get good audio, your sound person would then switch over and go back and forth between those people, and so that they don't all have to wear lavalier microphones, but you can catch it on the shotgun mic. So really cool. The other thing that once you start running long cables, cable management becomes an issue. And I love these like little leather or little control things for your audio cables. I have one that looks like a little piece of leather, and you wind it up and you click it on. There's other modes of this. There's one that looks like a little barbell, but I pick these things up all the time. They're inexpensive and they save a lot of headaches as far as just keeping stuff, so I'm not untangling it all the time. I'm not one of those guys that really likes putting up Christmas lights because I gotta untangle them. I like all my wires not to be tangled. So anyway, that's that. And the other joke of that too is that if you don't have a boom mic, again, a selfie stick is just as cool. You can take your shotgun mic, detach it from the selfie stick. Selfie sticks also come with a way to support your camera a lot of times too. So we were talking about buying your camera holder. Just buy a selfie stick that can detach. I think I got this at Roberts. Talk about Roberts a lot. And then you can use this as your mount your camera on, your shotgun mic on, and hold it out of frame, and have your friend hold it out of frame. So selfie sticks are great. So directional microphones. Now, doing these presentations for me I can't really tell how people are jiving with it. Usually when I'm doing it like as a human to human thing, I really like getting feedback from people. So I don't know if I've covered enough stuff or if I'm just rambling, but I'm going to try to stay on focus here and keep going here and not give you. All right. How to interview someone for a 2-minute documentary. First, prepare your questions before you shoot. Do your research and then write good questions. Avoid yes or no questions. The worst thing you can do is ask somebody a question and then they answer yes. So, did you like the movie? Yes. No. Doesn't give you a lot to work with in post, in editing. Don't give out specific questions in advance. Now, I have a hard time with this because I always want people to be on the same page. So I always have given out questions and saying, we're going to talk about this, but it does feel rehearsed sometimes, especially if you're looking for particular kinds of questions. So it's best not to give them out. You can talk generally about what you're going to talk about, but don't give them the questions. That's kind of a pro tip. The next thing we need to talk about is release forms. The release forms are one of those things that you just need to get when you're doing anything. It's always good to cover your behind when it comes to anything related to the filmmaking. This guy I have here, there's a link in your curriculum. He's got some great release forms that you can download for free. Those release forms are usually like a media release, which I get from people, which just basically says that they are in on this and that they understand. Anytime you're being interviewing somebody specifically, you need one of those releases. If it's just general footage, I usually don't worry about it if they're just covering an event or they're outside in public. But if I talk to them, I usually get a release form. If they are younger, if they are under 18, I have a parent sign for them as well as sign their information. I also, when you're filming on location, that's not a public location or an event, I would highly recommend talking to them before you do it and getting release forms for that location. Sometimes they want even insurance if it's a big crew. So you got to be cautious about that. So there is a release form for locations, a lot of release forms. When if you're interviewing your family, and it depends on what application you're using. If you're filming yourself, obviously you don't need a release form. But when you go out into the world, it's good to have your release forms. I have a huge stretch folder of release forms that I've done over the years. I don't even worry anymore about the project that I worked on. I just put everybody in alphabetically by name into this big stretch folder. And I've never really had anybody come back to me and say, hey, you weren't allowed to film me. I disagree with it. But I've heard stories of people working with kids where the parents are fighting and the kids did the thing and they did a huge campaign. They used the kid's head on a commercial and they didn't get permission. So they can get bad. So really, you especially if you're working with minors, get a release form for that and get their parents' signature on it. Anyway, go here. They'll talk to you about it, and they'll tell you all the details about release forms. So let's go on to the next bit. Help your interviewees feel comfortable. You don't want them stressed out. Jim was talking last week. He was like, make them your best friend. Chat a little bit about their, what they had for breakfast. How was their commute into the shoot? But get them, talk about their family. Who if they have children, I don't know. Just chat them up a little bit and make them feel comfortable. And then when you're doing the interview, be spontaneous. If you have a list of questions, obviously, that you're going to want to get from them before the interview is over, or your goals are to get it over. But as Jim was saying last week, things can go on tangents, and that actually might be cooler than you knew it was going to be. So roll it, react to people, interact with them, have a good time. And it's amazing what you can learn from, as you start doing the interviews, things you didn't think about. So be spontaneous, enjoy yourself, have fun. When I interview, I also do a lot of my own editing. So to help the editing process, I have them repeat the question in which I asked them. Now, when you have an on-camera interviewers, there's a picture here of Emoto interviewing somebody at one of our pinball conventions. She's on screen and she's interactive. You actually see her asking the question, then interacting. But when you don't plan to be on screen, sometimes to get context to what you're talking about, if you have them repeat the question in their own words, it's easier to edit in stuff. So I always have them repeat the question. So, what'd you think about the show? Well, please repeat it. He goes, well, I thought the show was this. And then that gives you some more context to edit. So have them repeat the question. Then the next bit is talking where you want your interview to talk. If I'm interviewing somebody off camera, I always have them look to the left of the camera. And it's hard when you're filming and shooting at the same time, but stand a little bit left of the camera and then have them give eye contact off the lens, off camera. When I'm talking to you in the lens right now, I am talking directly to the viewer. I am not talking to the interviewer. So when you're interviewing somebody, and you don't want this kind of news / context to your thing, you don't want them to speak directly to you, have them look off camera and then interview the person onto the side of the camera. So it gives you more to work with. So next bit is stay quiet when the interviewee's talking. When you talk on the phone, you hear a lot of yeah. And if people are quiet on the phone, you don't know if they're there anymore. They've gone away. So you give people responses to keep them talking. Yeah. But your interviewee needs that same kind of support as he's giving comments and reacting. So, big smiles, thumbs up, but do everything you can to not be verbal, because that audio can easily come over into the camera and then kind of spoil the shot. So your best bet is just to listen and give a lot of head yeses. Ask at the end of the interview final thoughts. You don't know everything. Sometimes special things come out when you go on tangents. Sometimes you're staying open to it, but at the end you're like, you got all your stuff out, but you haven't covered everything, or you don't know everything. Ask for the interview. Did I get it all right? Do you have any other thoughts, final thoughts? And I see newscasters do this quite often when they've done in-depth interviews with people. they ask if they have their final thoughts, and it's a classic way to get more information out of people, especially if you've missed something. So that is good. And then the last one is don't stop filming when the interview is over, because I tell the interview, okay, that's all I have. Do you have any final thoughts? And then they start chatting with me and we hold a conversation. And some of the nuggets of wonderful interview stuff is in that part when they think that everything's off, but it's not. So you just kind of keep rolling and keep chatting about stuff, and it's amazing what comes out. Or sometimes you turn off the camera and they keep talking to you, and you're like, that was really good, I just turned off the camera. Just let that camera keep rolling. That's the reason we talked about, not shooting in 4K, because you want all that footage, you want all the time you can get when you're doing documentary work, because there's some, you just got to keep rolling. So, all right. Hope everybody's on that. We're really trucking. I know we're trucking, but this is what we got to do to be a filmmaker. We're going to talk about open source video editing software. Most video editing software is designed to have a similar drag and drop interface. If you're new to video editing, try to use free open source video editing solutions. What's wonderful about that is that you don't have to pay for them. There's expensive editing softwares like Adobe, Final Cut, and Premiere, DaVinci Resolve. All these programs have some kind of cost associated to them, but you can get so much bang for your buck just right out of getting some open source software. And again, a lot of softwares come with your computer, like Apple has iMovie, which does a great job, which is very similar to open source software, or this particular OpenShot. But again, we want everybody to have access to it. If you don't have a computer, OpenShot works on Linux, Mac, and Windows software. And I like that about open source, or any of our software that we're talking about, is that it's open. You can download it free at this website. OpenShot is well documented online, and its interface is designed with helpful little pop-up tutorials. So as you're going through it, it will pop up and say, this is what you do here. This is what you do here. A lot of times when I use software from people, even stuff that I've paid for, it's not well documented, and it just drives me nuts because I want to do something and it doesn't have a large enough community to ask, or they charge you to ask questions. You're like, hey, where's my documentation? Where's my white paper? Where's my manual? OpenShot has that. It has a manual. It has well-documented videos. It has tutorials. And that's, again, why I like this software. And if you do use this software and you dig it, and it becomes something that you use, you might want to donate something to the developers. Give them $5. They're just doing it for fun, for free, something they love to do. But it helps to pay for servers, pay for things, pay for a little bit of their time. If you like it, please, for anything that's in the open source world, there's usually a donation page to the people who actually code it and write it and produce it for you. So please donate if you do use it. Quick tutorial about this software. And again, this is going to be a quick one because I'm going to run through the basics, because all video software is similar to this. You have clips, you drag them onto a timeline. So I'm going to run you through what this software looks like and what it does, and then I'll go into some tips for my editing, and hopefully I want to give enough time to others, so I'm going to keep rolling here. Step one is you import your media files, so everything you shot in your camera, you've dragged into your special 2-minute documentary project folder into your other little folder for source images, and you drag those into the video editing software for OpenShot. So once you've got your images and your pictures and your your videos inside this area stored, ready to go, your files, your project files. You then bring them and you drag them onto a track. And all the software is similar. You basically take your clips, drag it onto a track. And they'll have multiple tracks. Now, when you have multiple tracks, you can apply that in a couple different ways. You can add music to the track beneath it, and you can even layer or stack things. So a lot of times I'll have an interview, I'll cut the interview up, I'll bring all the pieces together, and then to kind of hide the time where the person's head is bobbing around, if you actually watched it through, the head will go boop, boop. You do a cutaway piece, and I put that on an upper track so I can see it. So use your tracks, and this software has multiple tracks. And then once you're done, you preview your shot, and you click the little triangle button like it's a old-time VCR, and you watch your video, and magic happens. Last thing you do is you export that video and you get it ready for the web. So then you do your, you hit your export, and you find the video file that we created in our file system called exported videos, and you export it to that file. So, and then there's a couple different ways to export your video files, but the best way to export them is to use a .mpg, and I think I put that into our curriculum. But there's a couple different ways to do it, and an MPEG file or an MPG4 is, or MPG4 is the probably the best file to share with people because it's compressed. It's taken a lot of high-res footage and then pushed it down and compressed it. So, all right. So I'm going to tell you now my 5 steps of my 5 editing process steps when I'm making a video. And again, I'm going to run through this, and then we'll do some quick Q&A. I import all my video pictures, clips, narrations, and I bring it all into the software, and I look at it and I log it. And I make little file folders inside of file folders. I put all my narration in one folder, or all the day shoot in another folder. But I just love on it. I look at it and I love on it, and I go, oh, and I get frustrated, and I'm like, oh, it's not what I wanted, or oh, I need to do that better, or maybe I can clean that up. And it's just the most wonderful yet stressful process is logging footage. But I get to know every little, I get to know everything about it. It becomes my best friend. So after you log all your footage, and after you've made it your best friend, and you've loved on it, and you know its flaws, and you know its most powerful pieces, you then create your first assembly. So you find all the best clips by all my interviews and all of my B-roll footage, and and then I drag that onto my timeline. Now, everybody knows what an interview is, but I'll use cutaways and B-rolls kind of interchangeably. That is footage that you shoot of stuff around the environment. It's stuff that goes on top of the edit. So B-roll is like, if you're in an environment, it's the cutaway picture of something else. So like, if I'm sitting in a room and I'm interviewing somebody about a lamp or whatever, you have the lamp, you do their interview, then you do the close-up of the lamp. So as he's talking about the lamp, you use your B-roll or that cutaway footage to again see the lamp, so or object. So that's the easiest way to describe it. And you can get really creative with cutaways and B-roll, and you can use your cool slow motion special effects. B-roll can be a lot of fun. And then if I don't see everything in this first assembly, and I've stressed about it, and I know what I need to do, I will then kind of leave a place for the footage that I need to go pick up. So I might go out and shoot more. I might do more interviews. I'll figure out what I need, and I'll go get it. And then I also at this time will start creating my 2-column strip like Jim had, and start figuring out the images, start figuring out my my best audio clips, and I'll write them down, and I'll start composing and figuring out a narration for those anything else I need to keep the video going. So once that's all done, I go into my rough cut, and my rough cut is where I'm getting more and more brutal with stuff. I start getting rid of all the junk. If I don't need it, I throw it out. Sometimes there's really cool stuff. I like it. It made the first cut, but then I toss it because it just doesn't work for the piece. And I only will use stuff that I know will work for the piece, even if it's cool. So I trim back all the dead space. I highlight all the missing points, and I use all my cutaway footage to bridge that time. So when you're editing something, somebody says something really good, and then they get on a little tangent, you can cut that tangent out, put it next together to another cool piece. But obviously there's some missing time there. You can actually hide that missing time by putting a really good cutaway. So then they talk about the lamp, but yet then for a while they talk about their dog, which is irrelevant to the lamp. But then they get back to the lamp. So then you can then do your cutaway at the lamp, and it looks like it's all one long thought. I keep tweaking my edit until I like it. And then I share it with my colleagues, my wife, and my coworkers and my clients. And then they come back with me with some detailed notes. They take notes and they say what they like and don't like. And I write them all down. And I might disagree with people, or I might like them. If they're a client, I'll usually agree to most of their concerns. I might rationalize. I might say, hey, I think this is the only thing I got, and they will have to agree or disagree or send us back out. But we share at that point, and I keep editing. So I do what we call the fine cut next, which is I address all the issues from the notes that I've gotten from colleagues and friends, family, and I finish my editing. And from that point, we then what we call lock picture. And at this point, we can't do any more changes on the content of it. And when you're working in a big Hollywood system and you have a Marvel film out there, the director has that fine cut point where he's got all of his content, and then he sends that film to all the people doing all the fancy special effects, all of the explosions or whatever, and he can't touch it again because now it's going to go through the post-production process. So then we do what we call the final cut, which is I go back through all of the footage and I color correct it. So if I shot something in an environment that was sunlight and then one inside, and the color is a little weird, or maybe I shoot fluorescent light in one room, or I shoot on a different camera. A lot of times cameras, man, you shoot one camera and then you try to shoot another camera at another place, or somebody gives you some footage, it's off. So to make it seem like it all looks good and that there's flesh tones that are all the same, you have to color correct. So you got to go in there and touch up the color. So every shot gets color corrected, and to make it look like it's all one thing. There's also a lot of creativity in color correction. They call it color grading as well. And the Hollywood people, can add colors to stuff and make it look like, it's more dramatic or hide colors or pop colors. It's an amazing tool that you can use. So color correction, again, it's a whole nother art form, but you need the basics to get a nice edit. I have my graphics and titles at this point. I finalized my music. I might have used some music that I didn't have rights to. So I have to make sure that I have rights to those music and I've paid for it before I use it. If not, I have to find new tracks that will work, or I will work with a composer to finalize my music. I have composers that I use for my stuff. I have that luxury sometimes. Other times I have to go out to the web and find music and then use royalty-free music, which you can then find on the web and download and put in your projects. I mix audio tracks. I finally got all these layers of audio. I got the narration. I got the people talking in the interviews. I got truck sounds outside. I've got lamps turning off and on, clicking. I don't know what the hell. but I put on my headphones and I listen to all of it and make sure that it all seems eloquent and works together. I'm one of those guys too that if somebody's talking, I want to hear them. I bring down the music at that time, because what's most important, as we said before, is audio and hearing people. If the music's too loud, you can really tell in your headphones that you really need to bring it down, because what's most important is talking, not music. But there's certain times where you want that music to come up and there's a big swell and you have all kinds of cool images, then you got to bring the music up. So you put on your headphones and you do your fine mix. All right. I watch my video one last time for any more mistakes, and they're usually spelling mistakes, and I find them, or if I don't find them, I get teased about them. And then I export and archive the master. So I take the highest res possible, export it. It's usually gigabytes big. Obviously, nobody can play that. So then we got to compress it. And we then upload those files to the websites that then squish the file so it can stay on the websites. But you always want your master to be as big as you can get it. And then you then recompress it into an MPEG and then distribute it or share it. So,
But so we have a question about lighting, and I'm not sure if this is specific to shooting with cell phones, but I'll give it a whirl. Any thoughts on using a light meter? I shot an A and B camera and the lighting was off, guessing because I didn't match the correct combined room light temperature. I don't own a meter. Do they need one?
I have an old Sekonic light meter and I love it. Light meters were really more important when you were shooting film because film was definitely much more temperamental. There was different kinds of film stocks that should see in different kinds of light, and you really needed a light meter. But the cameras do all that stuff built in. So I would say no. I would think learning a little bit about color temperature, about how you set your cameras, as well as you doing your color correction in your software, especially some of the higher end softwares. I'm not sure, open source doesn't have a ton of color correction. It's got a little bit, but adding, that's, you get into color correction, color grading, and light, which is a whole nother topic. We took us an hour to get through just the basics of shooting with a cell phone. That's a whole another kettle of fish. But I would say no on the light meter and yes on the color correction in post.
How do you choose a topic for a documentary? Do you recommend choosing a topic that's close to your heart, or look for things that are more like call-outs or themed film fests? What do you recommend?
What I would do is make something that's definitely close to your heart, especially if you're doing it. If you have a passion for pinball, or if you have a passion for social issues, those are going to be the best documentaries. And then you find a film festival that then fits your needs to get the word out about it. So if you like horror films, make a horror film and then put it into a horror festival. As far as documentaries go, also too, you can be more practical. And I get people pay me to make these things, and I never knew that I would be so interested in stuff, and I just do it. There was a gentleman who was flying a hawk in my backyard. We're next to a field, and he was training the hawk with the gauntlet, and he would fly, and he was filming it, making his own little documentary about it. And I walked out one day, he was there a few days, and I said, I have a tripod. I can loan you my tripod and you could get some better footage of this hawk. And he goes, this is actually the very last footage of this goshawk that I'm going to film, Rose. And I just got my last shot. I know what I want, but I needed an editor. So then he said, he paid me, and I came in and I edited his film about goshawks. And he had footage of it coming out as an egg and all this stuff. And I learned all this stuff about falconry, which I would have never known if I didn't talk to this guy who walked out in the middle of this field and play with this hawk. So yeah, I just be open to the idea of doing stuff, following your passion, and just making something, using a project like this, like where you just make a 2-minute documentary, see if you like it. Do something that's also an attainable goal. Let's do something small first, see if you like it, see how passionate you are about it. But if you do something too big, sometimes you never reach the end of it. Like we're working on some big film projects, and they never end. They keep working on them. They keep working on them because they're funding and all this other stuff that goes along with it. With a phone, you can just get out there, shoot it, do a thing about your dog, and then post it on the webs. It's amazing what you can do. So I follow your passion.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. As I was saying when I was muted, I posted a bunch of links in the chat so you can learn a little bit more about me, what I do, and there's various links to my work as well. So to introduce myself, my name is Emoto Harney. I am the owner of Captain Crazy Productions at your service. And I have been doing professional film and video for well over 10 years. I established my company in 2008. I've been shooting professionally since I was about 15 years old. So I'm 35 as of yesterday. So it's been a long time coming. Thanks for the clap, James. So I have been working with James in the past few years, creating lots of pinball content. And that's kind of my passion. Now, this whole program is about shooting on your cell phone. And to me, that's such an important and powerful tool these days to create content. Because to me, efficiency is everything. You know, on these professional jobs, we're working with 40-pound cameras, huge lighting rigs, audio and stuff, and things go very slow and a bit cumbersome. So when you really want to shoot in the moment, it's important to be efficient and ready, and having a smartphone these days can give you that awesome quality that, you know, we've always wanted. So, you know, these phones shoot in 4K now, which is huge. They have great low light. James did an awesome presentation of how to shoot with an iPhone. A few tips that I would love to just add to that, if everyone in this program are planning on shooting with their phones, is to check your settings. So when you go to your camera settings, like for example, this is for the iPhone, there are various format settings. So James talked about aspect ratio, which is important if you want to shoot 4K, which takes up more space on your phone, versus shooting something smaller like a 1080p, especially if you're just publishing to web. But one of the most important things I find is to check your compatibility formats. On the iPhones, if you're shooting with iPhones, it gives you two settings, high efficiency or most compatible. Now, we always really want to use the most compatible, because then it's really just a drag and drop onto your computer and into your editing software. Sometimes when you're working with the high efficiency mode, it's a very specialized codec. So like for iPhone, it's a HEVC codec, and our editing programs don't organically read that. So we'd have to transcode it into like an H.264 format, like a .mov, and then bring it into our editing software. A way to avoid that is also you can edit directly on your phone. And that's kind of something that I like to do as well. So as work as a professional, I am a traveling cinematographer. I am constantly on the road and working for various companies. I just got off of a DoorDash commercial. You know, we shot a Nintendo commercial earlier this year. And so my passion on the documentary side is arcades. So I'm a big gamer. As you can see behind me, I have all these pinball machines. I actually shot this photo on my iPhone. And so during my travels, I go to various arcades and do walkthrough videos of them. You know, I promote the culture and I love it so much. That is my passion. Like James was saying, you know, create a documentary about something you're passionate about. And that's my biggest passion. So I come into an arcade, you know, I ask them if I could film a walkthrough video, and then I use my phone. I usually connect it to a gimbal, as you can see here, which is super awesome. I recommend everyone getting one. The phone just pops right on it, like super easy, and you get extra stability and motion. And this thing is like $100, and there's various options for that. Then I will bring my footage into, I prefer iMovie, just it works. And you can see like, just like a open shot, you have a timeline, you have your audio and video, and I can just sit on the airplane and, you know, edit my video all the way up until where I post it on my social media. So, creating content and storytelling is awesome, and to keep it efficient allows you to complete the project. Everything, you know, it's what we do is hard, creating content and storytelling, and the easier you can get it done, to me, I feel like is a really great way of actually completing and getting to the next step, which is showing it to people. I did prepare a very short reel of some stuff I've shot on my iPhone. And also with those links, you can see, especially with the Emoto Arcade, YouTube and Facebook links, 90% of that content, edited or not, is all shot on my phone. But I'm gonna share my screen and play you guys this little reel just so you can kind of see the capabilities of the iPhone. Okay, great. So this is my iPhone reel, guys. This is kind of like the live stream stuff I do. So all of that was shot on the iPhone. The second half was some live streaming shots. I do a weekly live stream show called PinTech Live, where we teach people how to work on and fix their pinball machines. And that's been a pretty fun endeavor too. We use various webcams, professional video cameras, and kind of mix it all together using OBS or Streamlabs OBS software. OBS stands for Open Broadcast Systems. And yeah, it's great. Yes, there is a DDR Extreme machine. That's awesome. Yep, so OBS is the tried and true way to stream. It's a free program. It has lots of great plugins and stuff you can use. And then this is with Marco Pinball that we do this. So we restream. We use restream.io. It's a website you can go to and a service provider, and it allows you to do multi-streaming, which means we are going live on Twitch, on Facebook, and on YouTube all at the same time. That's a super powerful feature to take advantage of social media analytics. And if you are working on a project and you have a Facebook page or some type of social media presence via Facebook or Instagram, the publishing live videos, going live actually has a higher weight of recognition on the software. So people will see that in news feeds faster and more so than if you had just created a video and then published it. So doing the live aspect is really important for your analytics and getting your content out there. There's also little like tricks of the trade where you can professionally edit your video ahead of time and then tell your social media that it is a live video, so you can get that boost in analytics, but you get the power of editing everything in post and not have to do live editing.
All right, well, I'm Christy Thompson from the Digital Media Lab, and I'm just going to give you a really quick tour of the space and some of the different things that we have to offer. While we do have video editing capabilities, we also have lots of other things that you can do here. So I'm just going to very quickly try to go over all of that. And I'm going to flip my camera around. All right, so this is the Digital Media Lab, and you can see we have kind of a variety of 3D printers. We also have what is called the Whisper Room, and I'll go in there in just a moment. That is a sound isolation recording studio that you can reserve for free with your Carmel Clay Public Library card. For the space in general, all you need is a Carmel Clay Public Library card in order to use the facilities. The only thing that we charge for here is 3D printing, and that's just to recuperate the cost of the plastic itself. We try to charge you a really low fee. Pretty much however much plastic you're using is what you'll be charged for the 3D printing services. We also have the iMacs out here. The iMacs have the Creative Cloud software on them. They also have other various video editing softwares, different vector softwares, other things like Handbrake, Lightroom, all that kind of creativity designing software that you're going to need, we have here. We also have a Cricut machine. The Cricut is used to take designs from the digital world and bring them into the real world, either via paper, leather, vinyl. You can use balsa wood, or you can also use something like a chipboard. This little llama was made out of chipboard. We also have digital tablets for digital illustration. So you would be able to draw on the iPads or the Wacom tablet. We have a Wacom Cintiq. That's what this device is. We also create various content that you can get online on the library website. If you go to the library website and then locations, the Digital Media Lab, there are a variety of activities. So we have some 3D design activities. We also have other activities that just kind of inspire you to get into Photoshop or on the other devices. And we also have a lot of resources available. If you come in, we have printed copies. We also have copies on the library website, different topics like video editing, maybe on a Mac or on an iPad. We have things for photography in Lightroom. One of the really cool things about some of the Adobe products, if you do come into the lab and you are wanting to learn them, Adobe now has a Learn feature. So it will walk you through hands-on tutorials for how to do all kinds of different things. And see, these have kind of 2 to 5 minute tutorials that just walk you through how to import, how to edit clips, going over an overview. And now we're going to step into the Whisper Room. So like I said before, you do have to have a library card in order to reserve the space online. We have a few different types of microphones here. We also have a Focusrite that you can use to plug instruments into. And we have an iMac that has a few different recording softwares. We have Logic, Reason, Audacity, Audition, GarageBand. GarageBand is probably the most popular. I think we also have Fruity Loops or FL Studio. We have a MIDI keyboard. We also have a MIDI drum kit. And we do have a Rolly block that's not out right now, but we do have a Rolly block. Those are used for creating beats. We've had large groups in here in the past. Due to COVID, we're trying to limit that. In the future, we will be joining the main library. And I have an image here on the wall I'm going to show you. So this is kind of the interior design for what the digital media will look like in the future. So we're going to be moving over to the main library. And once we do that, we are going to have a full video recording studio with cameras and microphones available. We'll also have separate audio rooms. All the rooms are being purpose-built for sound. We're going to have more iMacs there and more 3D printers and hopefully some new and interesting devices that people can use. At that point, I do not think you have to have a Carmel card. It will be opened up to reciprocal borrowers as well. And I think that that is just about it for us.
Great job. Thank you very much.
All right.
I'm always amazed at what the Carmel Library offers and wish that when I was a young person, that I would have access to all these incredible tools for being creative. It's amazing, an amazing place. And I look so much forward to the new opening of the library and all the resources that you're going to bring us there. It's going to be
it's been really cool for the teens. I think just seeing them grow. Like I've had teens that I saw in 2016, 2017 that are coming back and saying, you know, they did recording here and then they went off to go to Berkeley or other places to learn audio engineering professionally. And they're really just grateful for the opportunity that they had here to be able to record and get experience before doing those other things. And it probably helped them get to being able to do those other things as well. So I think the teens really enjoy it.
And we have cool people like you too, helping them learn those tools. Everybody at the Media Lab is so welcoming and so open and so kind to share what they're working on, teach what they're working on. 3D printing it's taking over, and I don't have that technology at my home. So for me, I'm learning all kinds of stuff, and every time I walk in there, I learn something new. So I don't know. If you don't know about the Digital Media Lab at the Carmel Library, for free.
Yeah, we have a variety of staff members that all just have a different expertise. And, we have some people who are just really good at maybe 3D modeling or video editing. So you have all of this expertise available to you. And we try to help out as much as we can or answer questions. And if we don't know, we're willing to try to figure it out and use our Google abilities and see what we can help you do.
And you have classes online. You outline, okay, this is going to be an Illustrator course. This is going to be, and once the Media Lab gets opened up again, I'm sure those courses will be more accessible. But those are wonderful resources for even people like me who have done media their whole life, there's always something new to learn. So hanging out with people, that was one other thing that I didn't cover in my thing, which I really need to cover. People ask me all the time, what kind of microphone do I get? What kind of technology do I need? What kind of phone do I need? What kind of software do I need? And my first answer to that question is, what do your friends have? Because your friends, your coworkers, those are going to be your technical resource people. You might take a class in something, but if you have more questions, that class is over. So find your friends. If they have PCs, get a PC. If your friends are working in Final Cut. I've said this over and over again, that hanging out with Emoto, she's helped me grow my cinematographic capabilities and my producing capabilities, because she's doing those same things at that same level. And has other experiences that I've never had. So by listening to her and being, understanding her, becoming a friend, she's helped me out so much, and she's been so generous with her time sharing with me. Same thing for the folks at the Media Lab. There's people there that I see there as regulars who this is a family of people. So it's really a wonderful place. So anyway, I love my library. I love my Media Lab. All right. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
All right, one last speaker, and then we're running short on time, Nathan, so you got to make it a wonder tour. So Nathan Bechtel, are you still around?
I'm here.
All right, Nathan, take over.
Hey, guys, I'm Nathan Bechtold. I'm the president of the Indiana Filmmakers Network. We've been around for about 20 years, actually a little bit longer, but I've been working with IFN for 14 years almost, and we became a non-for-profit about 6 years ago. Up until COVID, we had 8 chapters, 8 hubs across the state, plus distance education and study abroad program that we worked on. COVID really kicked our butt. So a lot of our partners have gone out of business, or we just have to change a lot of things. So coming up for next year, we just kind of have to reestablish. So forgive us that we're not where we were, but give us about a year, and hopefully we'll be back to where we were. And we can always use partners and volunteers like yourselves for those who might be interested in joining up. But you can find us on Facebook, on social media. And for the most part, what we offer is free. We do like to have a $20 membership fee for like larger events and stuff for certain members, but we rarely go after anybody about, hey, where's our membership? Because you know how that works. But we do encourage people to attend our events, and not just our events, but events such as Carmel Film Forum and other wonderful film and cinematic arts events throughout Indiana. There's always something going on. So just keep your eyes open for opportunities. As for resources, like if you've been on this program, you've heard a lot of great resources for smartphone usage. We have a partnership with Filmic Pro. They're amazing. They've given us some great equipment and application access over the years for our holiday parties and different events. So I highly recommend Filmic Pro. There's another thing that if you go to Film Convert, they offer a thing called Cinematch. I would look into that as well at cinematch.com. As far as Filmic Pro, it's just filmicpro.com. I was trying to think of some things that might be good for like iPhone or Android for special effects. There's some simple effects on like FX Guru. I don't get to play around with that myself, so forgive me that I don't have all that information, but I can get it for you. So if you have any questions about that, ask James or myself. We can give you that information. If you have any questions about Indiana filmmaking, let me know. Some of the resources around the state, let's say we have Film Indiana, which is through tourism. They are the people you want to talk to if you want to film, well, pretty much anywhere throughout the state. It's not really necessarily like the film commission per se, but it is the people who you want to talk to if you want to film at a state park or a local resident, or even if you want to have like your local street blocked to film at or whatever it may be. But let's say we're talking about smartphones, we're talking about getting permissions or something like that, say for park photography. They'd be perfect to talk to. Your local visitor center or parks or recreation are perfect. And I think more filmmakers and photographers need to talk to their local parks and rec and visitor centers about what is available in their areas. I highly recommend that. One of our partners is Mid-America Filmmakers in South Bend, Indiana. So if anybody's viewing from up in South Bend, please check out the Mid-America Filmmakers. They're wonderful. They also have free monthly meetings and also script writing meetings monthly. As for script writing, there are some great apps for breaking down scripts, like Saltex or whatever. For your iPhone and such. There are great, wonderful free apps. Local studios. Anybody want to know about local studios that might be available to them? Well, there's a couple, really good ones. So there's Zahi Studios in Indianapolis, the Box Studios in Indianapolis, FME Studios in Indianapolis. There's a couple studios in Evansville and a couple in Fort Wayne as well. If you'd like to know about those, let me know. There's, of course, Roberts is a wonderful resource, which I highly recommend. Camera Outfitters here in Lafayette is where I'm from, is a wonderful resource. If you're a photographer or if you do smartphone photography, Second Level Studios here in Lafayette is wonderful. They have some good tutors to work with. Velvet Lotus as well here in Lafayette, and Focus On Studios in Carmel. Fantastic resource. And they're not too expensive. They're pretty cheap, if not free sometimes. So just look out for events in your area. There's a ton I could give you. So I hopefully if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Yeah, I can list all those in chat, sure. Yeah, let's see. Oh, let me give you, while we're talking about smartphones, let me please give a huge shout out to our partner at the International Mobile Film Festival in San Diego. IFN has been a proud partner of theirs for years, and Susie Vitello puts on an amazing show from photographers and cinema filmmakers from all over the world that shoot on smartphones. So if you have anywhere, short documentary pieces to features, she has multiple programs built up to facilitate viewing of that and prizes, and it's amazing. It was literally the first one to ever go public in the world. So check out International Mobile Film Festival, and I will share that link as well. It might be after I talk, but it's hard to do while I'm talking. But I will definitely share all those with you guys. Any questions while I have you? Anybody? Yeah, there's tons of great resources. My biggest thing is that, and I think everybody said it, there's nothing stopping you but you. And today's technology is fantastic. I might not be overly tech savvy. I'm still antiquated. I'm still learning today's tech, admittedly so. But it's becoming more accessible, easier to use, and there's really no excuse anymore to go out and tell your story. Susie Patello at the International Mobile Film Festival and myself do a program called Mobilize Stories. where it's literally telling a tale, telling a story with your smartphone. Go out and find, like James was talking about with the hawk. The story finds you, you find the story. There's no reason not to tell it, and you learn a little bit, or sometimes a lot, in the long run of it. So I highly recommend just finding your story. Sometimes that's the best story. I think someone asked earlier about where do documentaries come from, where do you get your ideas and stuff like that. It's a need. I think if you find that there's a lack of something, you know how many cat videos are out there. So you might not want to do a documentary about cats, but you might want to personalize it, maybe about your personal cat or somebody's cat that's done something like, in case in point, there was one about an elder person I knew just a couple of years ago who she was passing away, and her daughter did a short camera or a short smartphone video about her mom's partnership and friendship with her cat that got her through chemo and all these horrible things while they lived so far apart, because basically her pet got her through everything. And if it wasn't for her cat, she probably wouldn't have made it. She probably wouldn't have got through. So that was a personal story, even though it was a cat story. So find the personal details and the sentiment in your documentaries. Let people resonate with the individual and the subject and your locations. That goes for almost anything. But I find that a lot of documentaries I don't get invested in, and that's a problem, because you don't want to lecture to people. You don't want it to just be a static conversation. So you really have to find a way in your documentary or your video or film at all to be able to pull people in and keep them engaged.
Sometimes you need filmmakers around you. You need your friends, your community to build, so that then you can share a common language, so that then you create better films. So the Indiana Filmmaker Network are those people. If you want to know filmmaking, if you want to get into it, if you want a community of people, you go to their programs. They're free. They, again, take donations. They have a wonderful Christmas party every year. They give away stuff at the Christmas party. They're great. So I'm always an advocate. Every film forum we have them in to talk about what they're up to. They're always working on a fun project. So we got to love our filmmakers. All right. Speaking of filmmakers, I hope we have some filmmakers out there that will participate in our project here. Now, you've met some of the people to impress: Moto, Nathan, Jim Simmons. All these people are going to be watching your film, so we need some films to watch, and you need to get them in. So I'm going to click over to my PowerPoint here, and we're going to try to wrap this up. Now, all this information is in your curriculum, as I keep pointing out to the curriculum, as well as been posted in the chat as far as what you need to do. So I'm going to go to my little PowerPoint. All right, we're going to create a 2-minute documentary using the techniques demonstrated in our curriculum, and you're going to upload it to be judged. The cool thing about it is that we took half of the budget from the Film Forum and bought a cool camera. So hopefully this will be a wonderful incentive for you to put your 2-minute film in. Thank you very much for all the wonderful work and that we received for this final session of the Carmel Film Forum. First off, I want to take this opportunity to thank some sponsors. It usually was tacked on to the end of our presentations, and sometimes we ran out of time. So I put it on the front of the presentation so that everybody can know how much we appreciate them for helping us bring the Carmel Film Forum to them every year. I'm going to turn this over to Meredith, and she's going to tell us a little bit about Roberts, and then we'll screen some films, and then we'll come back and present an award.
Hi, everybody. My name is Meredith Ranker. I am with Roberts Camera here in Indianapolis. I'm so excited to be here today. So James, thank you so much for having me. Being a part of this community from a photography standpoint and a filmmaking standpoint is one of the really fun things that we get to do. I've just been so amazed and impressed with just the changes and growth that I've seen with the artist community, the photography community, the video and filmmaking community here in Indiana. It's just grown such leaps and bounds in the last 10 plus years, and it's because of things like this, the Carmel Film Forum, Indie Film Fest. There's so many wonderful things, Heartland, the library, resources, opportunities, and it's just really wonderful to see. So to give you a little bit of my background, Roberts Camera is a third generation family owned business here in Indianapolis. For me, it's a family business. My grandparents started Roberts in 1957. We're celebrating 64 years in business this August. I have been working here in one way or another my whole life since I started answering the phones when I was like 11. But I've really been here in a more official capacity for the last 10 years. So I handle everything from just our day-to-day operations, marketing, HR, a lot of our e-commerce. So I wear a lot of hats, but it's so much fun. So we absolutely love what we do here. We have a staff of incredibly passionate photographers and passionate about the gear and technology, and we are here to be a resource for you. Education is our #1 priority, and making sure that people know how to continue in this craft is extremely important to us. So please stop down and see us. We have a rental department. If you're just looking to get started, not sure what equipment might be the right fit for you, we have a photo lab. We have a huge variety of used camera equipment through actually a separate division called Used Photo Pro. So a lot of resources to help you get started here. So I hope you'll come down and see us. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to switch over to the next slide here, and we're going to watch some films, and then we'll come back around and see you on the other side.
So the two different things that make up my life have to do with cycling and cooking. I'm a cyclist at Marian University, and then I also have a recipe business with Macro Chef, so I make healthy treats, doing all the cooking with protein powder and making kind of low-calorie recipes that were still delicious. Depending on the week, I'll probably ride 7 days a week. A couple of them might be like a very easy ride. Other days might be an interval ride where I have high intensity, and then other days might just be more of an endurance ride where I'm riding 4 to 5 hours, but steady. Eating healthy doesn't have to be chicken and rice and broccoli. It can actually be something tasty and enjoyable. As a cyclist, the food that I eat benefits me because helps recover after workouts, whether it's like the protein smoothie or just healthier things that better absorb by the body and fuel the workout better than something that might be unhealthy. The type of people that would be most interested in my recipes are those people who want to eat healthier but also have a sweet tooth and want to satisfy that sweet craving. Yeah, I like to make like a smoothie or kind of like a protein ice cream. I like making brownies, so like black bean brownies. You actually put black beans in there instead of flour, protein pancakes, stuff like that. So something cool about my smoothie recipe is that it's thick enough that you can put the blender over your head and it won't fall out, kind of like a Dairy Queen Blizzard. So my hope is that people who are athletes, even if you're not an athlete, can enjoy these recipes because I think eating healthy shouldn't be boring. You know, most people have the stigma that eating healthy isn't fun and that it's hard to get through, but with the recipes you can actually eat healthy, improve your performance, lose weight, whatever you're wanting to do, but still enjoy everything you're eating.
Love one another, put God first. A change has gotta come.
in Juneteenth, we painted Black Towns Matter in the middle of the street in Independence Heights. Most people know we did that, but we replicated that across the U.S. and Canada. So it was a international initiative to bring attention to the Black towns that were created out of racial strife because they didn't want us in a certain place. And being of African Americans beyond enslavement. It wasn't all about lynching. It wasn't all about being put in jail. It wasn't all about that, but you had people who formed their own town. In Independence Heights, we had 3 African American mayors. We had our own jail. We had the water company. We had our own infrastructure department. Down North Main Street were 40 African American stores. It was a very self-sustaining community. People did not have to leave there for anything. And if you go and look at the 1920 census, that's the first and only census in the United States that lists Independence Heights, County of Harris, City of Independence Heights. And you look at the rows and rows of families that made up the community at that time, and you will see they were teachers, and they worked at the railroad, and they did their own businesses, they had their own stores, and that's something to be very proud of.
Dear Mom, General Hospital, where we first met, no longer exists. It was there in Indianapolis on August the 2nd, 1957, where we shared that special day, our birthday. You named me after you and your best friend in high school, Camille Bontemps, daughter of Harlem Renaissance poet and novelist Arna Bontemps. To celebrate my birth, Dad bought a brand new black and white 57 Thunderbird. You said that because it was my very first car ride ever, when he brought us home from the hospital, I was responsible for eliminating the new car smell and shiny interior. Our visits to the General Hospital Baby Clinic were memorable. Dr. Francis D. Hummons, our doctor, told you that he thought that we were doing just fine on our first visits, but he also thought that I had on way too many clothes for it still to be summer, and that you should take some of those clothes off of that baby. Maybe that's why I still overdress to this day. I am remembering this all now because I am working on a new photo project. You and Dad always encouraged and supported my study of photography. In fact, Dad was the one who first told me about photography. You, Mom, you were my first location assistant. You rode with me on the bus to downtown Indy. You carried a tripod almost as big as you were to help me with that 4x5 camera to take exterior shots of the beautiful Marat Theater. My current project, the deconstruction of Wishart Memorial Hospital, Indianapolis, our hospital, is a photo documentation of the hospital's demolition. Shooting this project reminded me of our visits to the baby clinic and the hospitals with the long benches. The project also brought up some sad memories of you when you were sick there, and of Dad living his last days and dying there. I miss you, Mom, in our special place. Although the building is no longer there, that doesn't take away the memories that I hope to always have. This project is more to me than just the demolition of a local hospital. It's personal. Love, always, Susie.
Stop now. What? Being good. You like being good? Uh-huh. What's your favorite part of school? Going outside. What's your favorite color? Purple and pink. And lastly, what do you like to do? What do you like about karate? What? Can you kick me again? No. You're on video.
Okay, what do you think would make Redwood Falls even cooler downtown?
I think we get more business downtown.
We're in small town America.
I think that, you know, we have quite a few empty buildings now, sadly, after.
If the brave world tries to make it here, it'll get some buckshot in its ass.
What in downtown Redwood Falls do you think is pretty cool? One sentence.
The Caffeine Cafe.
What do you think would be cooler?
If we had a brew pub and a theater opened up again.
Wait for
What do you think is the coolest thing about Redwood Falls downtown?
Thrift stores and big deals.
What do you think would make it even cooler?
More thrift stores and more big deals. A place for nerds to hang out, share ideas.
My name is Jason Hornberger. I'm the owner of Sushi Boss. Right when it first hit, the pandemic it was very scary times. So it created a lot of challenges. For the business side of it, they were shutting down restaurants and doing carry-out only. Watching the news, stuff was changing every day. More and more people were not going out to eat for lunch or dinner. As soon as the pandemic hit, we started thinking a little bit outside the box. We got our team together and started brainstorming of different ideas, ways to stay afloat. A couple of our ideas were sushi rolling kits, so families could come up, pick up everything they would need to make sushi at home. A lot of families were really into that, so we also offered groceries from us. All of our fresh produce, our meats were available so that people could have it delivered to them. Really focused on people that weren't able to leave their house or needed the food delivered to them. We started doing our curbside service as well. We started doing contactless drop-offs for our catering. So we do, I think, around 15 hospitals around Indianapolis and do a contactless delivery to their kitchen so they could resell it to their workers. Business now is, it's very good. We have exceeded our expectations coming out of the pandemic. Now we're starting to see people come back into the store, and that other side of the business hasn't slowed down at all. It was a big thing for us.
Outdoors,
Animals enjoy refreshing breezes. They walk, wriggle, and hop freely. As these scenes play out, let's pause to consider the animals on the other side of the window. Separated by a thin sheet of glass, do stuffed animals yearn to be in nature? Are they content and comfy right where they are? Let's find out what they really think about being indoors all the time.
Lucky, when you look out the window at the great outdoors, what are you thinking?
For years, I wanted to be a bear and roam the forest. Then I wanted to be a bird and fly the sky. Now I want to be a squirrel and play. Still, I'm just a dog, and I'm stuck indoors.
Let's now hear from stuffed animals who come from a wilder background.
Squirrels look like they have fun, but check it out. I got snowboards on my feet, so I can zoom down the banisters of the stairs and along the sofas. I got it made here.
Not all stuffed animals hunger for the outdoors. Some are as comfortable as a couch potato at home. When you look out the window and see bunnies hopping around, what are you thinking?
They look happy because they got grass. But I'll tell you what, I got the carrot.
Here's a moose to add his wisdom to this story.
I dream of forests far from home. Why? Well, have you ever noticed that every stuffed moose has antlers? I want to discover one without them, and I shall fall madly in love. So let me out there now.
At night, the stuffed animals dream of adventure, food, or love, here or out there. One form of nature is everywhere: imagination.
Juliana started last year coming to Agape. She was recommended by the people at Brooks Place because she was having a real hard time dealing with delayed grief. And we got out here, and she had always loved horses but had never actually been around a horse. So they started off with the grooming, and then she got to learn to ride. And just, you could see as we would pull in every week, you would just see this big metamorphosis in her change. So she went from this very quiet, angry little girl to one that had full confidence. She gets on the horse, she sits up tall, she listens to the instructors, and just like a totally different kid when she's out here.
Good boy! The horses made me feel happy and amazing to ride here, and they make me comfortable around my surroundings.
And I asked her one day, I said, what do you feel like when you're on that horse? And she says, I can be me. So there's no pretense. The horse and her know each other, and she's bonded with the horse. And therefore, she can just relax and be herself. You know, that she goes, that trust is there, where I don't have that with a lot of people anymore. So that was like a real tearjerker for me going home. And then just seeing her love on the horse and knowing that that's something that's a physical being that she can love and she can trust.
Life is a cycle of seasons, anticipated here today, gone tomorrow. The sun rises on the first day of spring with all things new. Grass, flowers, buds on the trees, new births, eggs hatching, birds singing. April showers bring Mayflowers. A baby is born. As days get longer and hotter, summer arrives. The child becomes an adolescent, discovering the opposite sex. The child matures into adulthood, finding gifts and talents, setting goals, producing, accomplishing, achieving. Within are dreams, businesses, books, songs, and love. As maturity continues, autumn arrives. Leaves turn beautiful auburn. As the temperatures cool and the days shorten, only the evergreens maintain their color. The days become shorter and the nights longer. Wisdom of previous seasons turn the pate white as autumn transitions into winter, heralding the longest night cessation of life, death. To everything there is a season and a time, to every purpose under the heaven. Time to be born and a time to die. And such are the seasons of life.
Project Pinball helps rehabilitation.
For a kid that's in a hospital, you're playing a pinball machine, and for the time being, you don't have to really think about where you are or what you're doing. You're focused solely on playing pinball.
You know, pinball can be fun, but it can also be therapeutic because slamming that ball around when you're angry sure does make you feel a little bit better.
You know what, one thing I like about it, it makes them move. Laps around the wards is replaced to a lap down to the pinball machine and standing for an hour.
They have to use both hands. You kind of find yourself when you're playing pinball moving into it to play.
And so the kids can come in here, number one, stand. The ones that are having that issue, but they can still hold on, so they get that strengthening. And then they're using both hands and eye and watching. So it's going to be a great non-therapy therapy. And having a good time.
Pinball's great because it's lights, it's sounds, and you're so focused on getting that ball and hitting that target and getting those points that you're really not thinking about why you're in the hospital. You're able to distract your time away a little bit.
Pinball is a way to get your mind for the moment off of whatever is happening in your personal life. Even if it is a bad situation, having to be in a hospital, seeing a pinball machine can make it all better.
I just want to give back any way that I can. And my passion for pinball, I think, was a great partner for, this giving.
The Navajo Nation, located in the Four Corners region in the southwest, lacks proper water infrastructure, with many of their local wells containing high levels of uranium, arsenic, and other elements. However, there's been an extreme failure in addressing this issue since the U.S. considers native reservations to be sovereign tribes, legally separate from the U.S. Thus, the U.S. is able to make claims such as having 100% improved water and sanitation without factoring in the Navajo Nation. Despite the Navajo Nation's sovereignty, from 1944 through 1986, the Navajo Nation's land has been mined for millions of tons of uranium on behalf of the federal government. Although such mining was banned by the Navajo Nation in 2005, the impact of such mining still continues to this day. The mining operations have mobilized uranium, arsenic, and several other elements, contaminating the region's water. Additionally, the Gold King mine spill, which released 3 million gallons of water contaminated with lead, cadmium, arsenic, and other heavy metals into the Animas River in Colorado in 2015, has further plagued the Navajo Nation. While there are countless water charities that have been directed towards developing countries, few charities exist to aid those suffering from water poverty within America. Thus, America's claim of 100% improved water and sanitation remains a lie until the Navajo Nation's issues are addressed.
Maglon tag 1 million.
Dili ka mag-isa. Actual lang ang footage. Maganda ba? Ay, vlog. Nag-vlog kami dito. Hindi? Nag-vlog ka? Hindi. Mag-vlog din kami nga. Seconds naman ko. A minute? Seconds? Mana? Masa pa ka? Pero sa una ay gusto ko ng sa radyo. Pati yung cellphone mo.
It's a beautiful story about Joe and Melissa.
From like, I think we got to your doorstep, but it's your doorstep the first time I met you. Yeah.
Joe met Melissa by watching her leg pass a wall.
I walked into this place and you come around the corner and I'm like, yep. Because here's the kitchen, there's a wall, then you have your little nook kitchen, right? You have the stove, and on the other side you have cabinets with a counter. God, it's so fucking weird. I just remember seeing you and being like, yep, that's it for me forever now. Like, really, like, in a very upsetting way. Now.
And that was it. And he knew from that point forward that leg belonged to the person that he wanted to be with for the rest of his life. One day, sadly, Joe ironically went to see Melissa, was coming home, and he had a near fatal accident. And so he was taken to the hospital. He's in critical condition. They put him into an induced coma. The doctors miraculously said, yes, he will make it. Little did I know, she asked him in their hospital bed for him to marry her. I could not believe it. We're talking 8 years. All he wanted was Melissa. And then Melissa shows me a ring. Guess what? So happy.
It's fun.
From that point on, they were inseparable.
What is it? Fun. What I was talking about is the fact that you are this unique, weird thing in the world.
Sunday for me has always been market day. Doesn't matter where I am in the world, I always seem to find the Sunday market. I grew up near Maxwell Street in Chicago, where every Sunday I'd go and see all the blues musicians. And that's where I got my start. imitating them, wanting to be just like them. So the current setup that I'm using right now, with my legs, I've got the bass drum, and then on my strumming hand, I've got a snare drum. Lightly does the cymbal, ride cymbal. And when I push the banjo down real fast, I get a crash. Under this arm here is a cowbell. When I go forward with this hand, I get a wood block, which is a 1950s piezoelectric microphone. There's a harmonica microphone, a digital kazoo, and the last microphone is another 1950s microphone that allows me to sing 3 voices at once in tune with the banjo.
A me piace così, mi chiedi una canzone e ti dico di sì. Oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, wow, you're so good, you're so good, you're so good, you're so well, baby, you're so good, 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 you're so good.
Well, this is the point in our program that we want to thank all the filmmakers for participating in the Carmel Film Forum this year. And as far as I'm concerned, every one of them is a gem. I know how hard it is to make films, especially if you're new to some of the techniques. And so many people applied so many wonderful techniques. Each film was professionally reviewed by one of our judges. And as a follow-up to the program, we will send you your critique sheet that outlines and what they thought about your film, and then what you could do to as you improve the film if you want to extend it beyond 2 minutes. So that will be coming to you via email. Meredith is going to share, if she hasn't already, in the chat window, be a discount code there where you can use at Roberts. And the last little bit here, the Indie Film Fest will be sending out a snail mail with 2 passes to the 2022 Film Festival. And they also have all kinds of wonderful volunteer opportunities. So you could volunteer for the Indie Film Fest and maybe meet some other professional filmmakers, national filmmakers even, international filmmakers that are creating documentaries as well as feature films, and there'll be all kinds of neat discussions. So it's a really great community of people to volunteer for. At this time, I know this kind of feels like a View thing or an Oprah thing. I'm gonna give everybody applause for all the hard work they did, and thank you everybody for participating in our film forum this year. Now, Meredith's going to come back and announce our winner, as well as do a Q&A with the filmmaker. So that's it for me, and then I'll come back in a second.
All right. It's a lot of pressure. Thank you. Those were all incredible films. Those were so fun to watch. So thank you guys all. I know that sharing your work is hard and putting yourself out there is hard, and that was wonderful. So we will go ahead and announce the winner. And I apologize in advance if I pronounce this incorrectly, but the winner of the film festival is No More Water Under the Bridge by Sankali Padaru. So congratulations. That was just an extremely informative, well done video, everything from the audio to the graphics. It was really, really wonderful to watch. So congratulations. Oh, perfect. I wanted to make sure we could unmute you. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Sanchali Patharu, yeah.
Sanchali, I'm so sorry about that. That was wonderful. Well, Sanchali, I'm going to just give you a little preview. So you have won an EOS M50 Mark II with a lens from Canon, as well as a Rode video mic So it sounds like you're pretty good with audio, but this will make a so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Ask you a few additional questions about your film and about your interest in filmmaking. How did you get started? Where did your interest come from?
Well, actually, during quarantine is when I started like picking up filmmaking and animating. And for me personally, I'm really interested in like the field of public health. So I love using film and like kind of combining that and public health to kind of make public health more engaging to the public. So yeah.
That's wonderful. That is wonderful. So during quarantine, you started to research filmmaking and put stuff together on your computer?
Yeah, I started like experimenting with like animation on Photoshop, and I found like a bunch of tutorials on YouTube kind of like teaching me how to use the software. And yeah.
That's wonderful. That's fantastic. Now, where have you drawn inspiration from? Are there people or filmmakers that have inspired you?
Yeah, for sure. One of my favorite films is Marriage Story by Noah Baumbach. I'm not really sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but I really like how like authentic his films are, and they like draw from his personal experiences. And in my films, I want to, capture other people's personal experiences. So yeah.
That's great. And then obviously your film was specific to what's going on in the Navajo Nation. Now, how did you become aware of that?
So I was listening to like a person from the CDC give a lecture, and she was talking about how a lot of water infrastructure issues don't happen just like in developing countries, but happen like domestically. And when you think of domestic water infrastructure issues, you might think of like Flint, Michigan, because that was a really heavily, publicized issue. But when I was going into deeper research, I heard these stories from like the Navajo Nation where there's, not as much coverage. So from that, that kind of shaped my idea to document what's going on through No More Water Under the Bridge.
That's incredible. That's really wonderful. And was that, I'm assuming, to help spread awareness about this issue? Have you been able to do that a little bit with your film, or?
Yeah.
Good. That's wonderful. Because yes, I mean, the information that you provided, I was shocked, frankly. I didn't realize there was no real responsibility of the government. The difference of a Flint, Michigan issue versus the Navajo Nation. One of the things that I felt with your film at the end was I wanted to know, how do I learn more? How do I help? If somebody wanted to get involved, are you familiar with organizations that are working to resolve this problem?
I believe that there was actually one environmental lawyer who like kind of started a fund to help the people in the Navajo Nation. I can't remember his name off of the top of my head, but if you like look it up, I'm sure that you can find it. But I know that there was a fund started.
Okay. Now, what type of equipment did you use when making your film?
I pretty much just used Photoshop, and then my mom has like this drawing tablet type of thing, so I borrowed that from her to like kind of work on my animations. And then also I used a royalty-free music site called Jingle Punks. It's very helpful if anybody wants to know where to find royalty-free music, which is where I got a bunch of my audio from. So yes.
That's great. Okay, perfect. Now that you have a new camera, how would you utilize that if you were to make the film longer?
Well, I would definitely explore, experimenting with like kind of video cameras and capturing, more stories, around the world and in Carmel. And perhaps I'd even try and visit the Navajo Nation and capture those stories like in person.
That's wonderful. So was this your first film?
No, I've worked with animation a couple times in the past, but this is, not to this length though, never like 2 minutes long.
Now, and are you working on any other films at this time?
I don't have any in the process, but I'm definitely gonna keep going and, keep improving.
Great. What kind of things do you do to educate yourself on filmmaking?
Well, next year at my high school, I'm going to be taking an IB film course, so I'd hopefully like to learn, a lot more about filmmaking. And of course, this film forum was very educational and very helpful in like learning new techniques. Specifically the writing portion in like the first session, I took a lot of techniques from that, like somebody mentioned the 2 columns, like having one column for your visuals and having one column for like your narration, and that's been really helpful in like organizing, and something that I'm definitely gonna apply to filmmaking in the future.
Great. Now, is this something that you are considering as a career? Is this if you look 5 years down the road, do you see this being something you would look to do more full time?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm definitely gonna major in film in college and try to go, deeper into this.
That's wonderful. That's great. What things would you tell someone just getting started in filmmaking?
I'd say to definitely find topics that you're passionate about when you want to, kind of capture stories. For me, I'm into public health, so this is why this topic really resonated with me, and also like draw from your personal experiences. For example, like Damien Chazelle, like he was in jazz band for like in his childhood, and then from that he drew from that and produced like Whiplash, which is like an Oscar award winning film. So I think that like the more you're interested in your topic, the more it's going to be interesting to others.
That is absolutely fantastic advice. Sanchali, thank you so much. I don't have any more questions to go through with you, but I would love, and James, tell me if this is okay, to open it up, or if people want to put questions in the chat, I would be happy to ask Sanchali your questions. I know there have been lots of congratulations to you, Sanchali, and people loved your use of animation and sound and the topic that you covered as well. So if anyone wants to type in any questions, I can go through those. I'll give people a minute to get those in there.
Excellent work. Good. Excellent. So yeah, let's open it up to Q&A, and I think that's a wonderful opportunity to ask some questions and feel out your competition. So let's hear it.
And Sanchali, just so you know, I'll contact you after this, and we will get your camera to you so you can start creating more incredible things.
Okay, great.
Filmmakers, let's hear it. What we got? Lisa.
Oh, Lisa is asking, so for filmmakers who want to learn animation, what courses or online resources would you recommend?
For me, it was mostly just like YouTube tutorials. I was working through Photoshop. So if you search up like Photoshop animation tutorials on YouTube, you can find a ton of resources. So yeah, that was helpful for me in specific.
And Mia is asking, when did you discover your talent?
I mean, I guess I'm like still discovering it kind of, but mostly just I started learning, during quarantine, which is like about like a couple years ago, and I've been working with it ever since then.
Good. I'll ask you, do you have plans to try and send this video to anyone in government or within the Navajo Nation where this might be able to be utilized by them?
Actually, yeah, I would love to connect with them. I'll definitely like reach out and see if there's any like opportunities there.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, big. Let me say that the film festival judging was 3 hours long. It was some pretty good competition here. And it really boiled down to a couple films that some people were very passionate about, and we had a wonderful discussion. And it was not all these films weren't taken lightly. They all were wonderful. So Lisa, you had some kind of closing comments regarding judging and that you should keep creating and expanding on these ideas.
Absolutely.
So let me hand it over to you.
Yeah, so like James was saying, it was very difficult to determine a winner. I think we had talked about a final 4, and it did take several hours, and I'm not sure everybody was fully on board with every choice that we made along the way because it was so difficult. Like, we loved them all. So I just want to encourage you guys. There are so many film festivals that you can reach out to. There are a lot of stories that I was able to help review. Sorry. That I was able to help review that, you know, are really close to being right where they need to be. So I would just encourage you to expand on them, take the notes that were given to you, and by all means, if you would like to submit to the Indie Film Fest, we always are looking for some new filmmakers, and we encourage past ones to come back. Feel free to submit. You can find us on Film Freeway. Yeah, if there's any questions, you can feel free to email me as well. My email is lisa.manthei, MANTHEI, @indiefilmfest.org. We will be doing our next festival. We'll start screening in the fall, so we'll be accepting submissions soon.
Again, thanks everybody. We'll see you next year.